As the night settles in, so can you. Let us know in the comments, where are you listening this and what is your current time. After that, close your eyes if you like. Nothing we're about to discuss is urgent or even particularly interesting. And let us begin. In the shadowy corners of history, where the dust of centuries mingles with the whispers of half-forgotten tales, stands the enigmatic Voynich manuscript, a medieval puzzle wrapped in an enigma, tied up with a cryptographic bow that no one's managed to untie in over 600 years. Discovered in a Jesuit library in 1912 by the antiquarian Wilfrid Voynich, this codex is the ultimate cold case of the manuscript world. Think of it as the Da Vinci Code, but with zero resolution and maximum head-scratching. The manuscript itself is housed in the Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library at Yale University, and if you've got a penchant for the peculiar, it's a must-see. Its pages are filled with strange botanical drawings, astrological charts, and what may be an early attempt at doodling during a particularly tedious lecture on medieval herbology. But here's the kicker. It's all written in a language that no one, absolutely no one, can understand. Despite the best efforts of cryptographers, linguists, and even a few AI programs, the text remains as indecipherable as a cat's diary. Dating the manuscript has been like pinning down a shadow at sundown. Carbon dating places it around the early 15th century, roughly between 1404 and 1438. That's smack dab in the middle of the Renaissance, a time when Europe was just starting to shake off the musty cloak of the Middle Ages and rediscover the joys of science, art, and bathing more than once a year. This was also a period rich in secret societies and mysterious texts, so naturally, theories about the manuscript have abounded like conspiracy theories at a UFO convention. One popular hypothesis is that the Voynich manuscript is an alchemical guide, a kind of medieval how-to for turning lead into gold or finding the elixir of life. The plants depicted in its pages are unlike any known species, which has led some to speculate they might be the secret ingredients for recipes that would make a wizard's cookbook look like a Betty Crocker manual. However, given that medieval alchemists were about as successful at creating gold as a dog is at writing Shakespearean sonnets, this theory remains, shall we say, credulously quaint. Then there's the idea that the manuscript is a hoax, an elaborate prank by some medieval jokester with too much time and ink on their hands. This theory suggests it could have been a clever ruse to fleece wealthy patrons eager for the next big secret. This isn't without precedent. Medieval Europe was rife with charlatans and forgers. But it's a bit like saying the pyramids were just an elaborate sandcastle competition. It's possible, but it doesn't quite do justice to the mystery scale. Others have posited that the manuscript is some kind of lost language or secret code used by a clandestine society. Maybe it's an early Kabbalist text, or a cipher for a secret group of herbalists plotting to overthrow the local feudal lord with the power of really potent chamomile. But again, there's no evidence to back this up, only the tantalizing allure of what could have been. Despite its cryptic nature, the manuscript has had no shortage of admirers. It's as if the manuscript itself is a siren, calling to those who fancy themselves code breakers, luring them into its labyrinth with the promise of fame and glory. The likes of Alan Turing, the code breaker who cracked the German enigma during World War II, have tried and failed to make sense of it. And if Turing couldn't do it, you have to wonder if the key to this puzzle even exists. Of course, the human mind abhors a vacuum, especially when it comes to mysteries. Where facts are absent, imagination rushes in. So it's no surprise that the Voynich manuscript has become a magnet for all manner of fantastical theories. From alien scripts to time-traveling authors, it seems there's no idea too far-fetched when it comes to explaining this quirky medieval artifact. In the end, the Voynich manuscript remains a testament to the enduring allure of the unknown. It's a reminder that not all puzzles are meant to be solved, that some mysteries are best left to tickle the imagination rather than be dissected under the harsh light of certainty. It stands as a quirky, ink-stained middle finger to our modern obsession with answers, challenging us to embrace the delightful uncertainty of not knowing. And maybe, just maybe, that's its greatest secret of all. Speaking of mysteries that stand the test of time, let's swap the haunted corridors of medieval Europe for the sun-baked sands of ancient Egypt. Picture this, the Great Pyramid of Giza, looming large like history's most ambitious game of Jenga. It's the heavyweight champion of ancient world wonders, daring anyone to unravel its secrets. We're talking about a structure so colossal it makes modern skyscrapers look like Lego projects. Now, let's get some numbers on the board. The Great Pyramid was originally about 481 feet tall, which is roughly the height of a 40-story building, and it held that title as the world's tallest man-made structure for nearly 4,000 years. That's right, until the Lincoln Cathedral decided to upstage it around 1311 AD. The base of the pyramid covers a whopping 13 acres, supporting an estimated mass of 6 million tons. If you're wondering how many stones it takes to make a pyramid, the answer is around 2.3 million blocks, each weighing between 2.5 to 15 tons. That's like stacking Hummers on top of each other. So, how did the ancient Egyptians get those monstrosities up there? Well, the logistics of moving and placing these stones have been the subject of debate more heated than a Cairo summer. Theories range from the plausible to the downright sci-fi. Forget slave labor myths. Hollywood got that one wrong. Recent archaeological evidence suggests that the workforce comprised skilled laborers who were well-fed and well cared for. These workers, numbering in the tens of thousands, lived in nearby temporary cities, not unlike the construction camps of today. They downed their tools and more than likely a few ancient brews after a long day of work. Debunking the myth of slave labor is a bit like finding out that Santa doesn't actually fit down the chimney. It shatters a deeply ingrained narrative, but it's necessary for accuracy. Instead, imagine a dedicated workforce, organized and motivated, perhaps even proud of their monumental task. These weren't shackled souls, but rather a community of craftsmen and laborers who worked in shifts and were compensated with food, shelter, and clothing. Some inscriptions even suggest they had names for their work crews, like the Friends of Khufu, which sounds more like a club than a chain gang. Now, let's talk logistics. Theories about how the stones were moved range from leveraging massive ramps to using sledges across wet sand, a technique that minimized friction, making the blocks easier to slide. There's even speculation about contraptions that resemble rudimentary cranes. Whatever the method, it was a feat of engineering genius. Some scholars propose that a straight or zigzagging ramp was used, spiraling around the pyramid as it grew. Others suggest a complex system of weights and counterweights. And who can resist the romantic notion of aliens lending a hand? Though, let's face it, if extraterrestrials were involved, they probably would have left behind something more sophisticated than a pile of rocks. The pyramid's construction was not just a display of architectural prowess, but also a testament to the economic and political might of the time. Building such a behemoth required a robust economy to support the labor force and the logistics chain. The Pyramid Age coincided with Egypt's rise as a powerful and stable civilization. Under Pharaoh Khufu, the state had the resources and the centralized control needed to undertake such an ambitious project. It was less about ego and more about ensuring that Khufu's soul had a celestial launchpad to the afterlife, complete with all the bells and whistles necessary for eternity. But here's where it gets even more intriguing. Despite being one of the most studied structures in history, the Great Pyramid still holds secrets. For instance, the purpose of its internal chambers and passageways remains a matter of speculation. Were they ceremonial, symbolic, or perhaps something else altogether? Theories abound, but definitive answers remain elusive. And let's not forget the legendary cursed tombs, though the actual evidence of curses is about as solid as a sandcastle against the tide. In recent years, technological advances have provided new insights as researchers employ everything from 3D scanning to cosmic ray imaging to peer into the pyramid's hidden voids. These non-invasive techniques have sparked fresh debates among archaeologists and historians. It's a bit like looking for Easter eggs in a blockbuster movie. Every new discovery could rewrite a part of the script. As we continue to dig into the past, pun fully intended, the Great Pyramid stands as a monument to human ingenuity and ambition. It challenges us to question our assumptions and reminds us that history is not just a series of dusty facts, but a living dialogue between the past and the present. So, while we may never fully unlock all of its secrets, the journey to understand it is as captivating as the pyramid itself. And as we wrap up this leg of our journey, remember, the truth may be buried under layers of sand and stone, but it's the pursuit that keeps us coming back for more. Stay tuned as we continue our trek through history's greatest enigmas. As we continue to unearth the mysteries of the past, Let's hop across the English Channel to a landscape littered with more stones than a rock concert. Stonehenge. Now, if you've ever felt bewildered by a jigsaw puzzle missing half its pieces, you'll have a taste of how archaeologists feel about this Neolithic marvel. Stonehenge is a prehistoric paradox, as enigmatic as a cryptic crossword and just as irresistible. Standing proudly on the Salisbury Plain, Stonehenge has been around longer than your great-great-great-grandfather could even dream. Built in stages over 1,500 years, its construction kicked off around 3000 BC, making it older than the pyramids and nearly as ancient as the concept of bad hair days. Those towering sarsen stones, some weighing up to 25 tons, were hauled from Marlborough Downs, a cool 20 miles away. Talk about getting your steps in, but wait, there's more. The smaller blue stones, each tipping the scales at around 4 tons, travelled approximately 140 miles from the Priestley Hills in Wales. That's like dragging a grand piano from Cardiff to London, minus the help of roads or Spotify playlists to ease the journey. How these Neolithic folks managed this feat without the modern miracle of the wheel is a head-scratcher that has scholars in a tizzy. Now, let's talk about the why, always the juiciest bit of any mystery. Was Stonehenge an ancient temple for sun worshippers, an astronomical calendar, or perhaps the world's most elaborate prehistoric party venue? The astronomical alignment theory holds water, as the monument famously aligns with the sunrise on the summer solstice. This has led to the theory that Stonehenge was a kind of Neolithic observatory. Imagine ancient druids in their robes, craning their necks skyward, making sense of the cosmos before telescopes were a twinkle in Galileo's eye. But before you start picturing druids with iPads, let's debunk another myth. The idea that Stonehenge was built by a mysterious Celtic priesthood is more fiction than fact, with about as much historical weight as claiming King Arthur dropped Excalibur in the Thames. The Druids came along much later, and while they might have had a penchant for robes and rituals, they weren't the masterminds behind this stone circle. As for the rituals themselves, they've evolved into something of a spectacle. Modern-day visitors, ranging from earnest pagans to curious tourists, flock to Stonehenge, especially during the solstices. It's a scene that's a cross between Burning Man and a historical reenactment, complete with flower crowns and the occasional drum circle. The site has become a cultural touchstone, drawing everyone from spiritual seekers to selfie-snapping travellers. But let's not get carried away by the romance of the stones. The reality of Stonehenge today is tangled in the mundane web of preservation and tourism. The site attracts over 1 million visitors annually, turning it into a cash cow for English Heritage, which manages the monument. Admission fees, parking charges, and the obligatory gift shop selling everything from Stonehenge snow globes to Druid-themed socks contribute to a thriving tourist economy. Who knew ancient stones could be such a modern moneymaker? Preservation is another hurdle. The stones, battered by the elements and centuries of human touch, require constant care. It's a battle against time and weather, with restoration efforts more delicate than a game of Jenga. The surrounding landscape is also under threat from modern infrastructure, leading to heated debates over proposed road tunnels and their impact on the site's integrity. It's a classic case of progress versus preservation, with history caught in the crossfire. Yet, despite these challenges, Stonehenge stands resilient, a symbol of timeless human achievement and curiosity. It invites us to ponder not just its construction, but the minds behind it, their beliefs, their ingenuity, and their relentless pursuit of the monumental. It whispers stories of a bygone era, challenging us to imagine a world where the night sky was the ultimate guide and stone circles marked the passage of time. As we leave the standing stones of Stonehenge, our journey through ancient enigmas is far from over. Each site we explore offers a new piece of the puzzle, a fresh perspective on the complexities of human history. So, stay tuned as we continue to delve into the mysteries that time has yet to unravel. There's plenty more where that came from, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. And speaking of enigmas that could make Sherlock Holmes scratch his deerstalker-covered head, let's sail across the Pacific to the isolated wonderland known as Easter Island, or Rapa Nui if you're feeling like impressing your friends with some local lingo. This tiny speck of land, lost in the vast expanse of blue, is home to some of the most famous stone faces in the world, the Moai statues. These monolithic figures, with their elongated heads and brooding expressions, are as much a symbol of mystery as they are of the ingenuity and, dare I say, audacity of the Rapa Nui people. These statues, numbering around 887, were carved between 1400 and 1650 AD. Picture this: a society capable of creating these colossal sculptures, with some weighing up to 82 tons and standing over 30 feet tall. It's like someone decided to one-up their neighbour's lawn gnome collection with a full-scale Easter Island head. But how did a civilization with no wheels, no pulleys, and limited resources manage such an architectural feat? Well, that's the million-dollar question that has historians and archaeologists playing a perpetual game of historical Cluedo. One popular theory posits that the statues were transported using a system of ropes and wooden sledges, possibly employing a rocking motion to walk the moai to their final resting places. Imagine a group of islanders shouting orders and adjusting ropes, all while maneuvering these giant stone figures across rugged terrain. It's not exactly a scene you'd find in a motivational poster, but it's a testament to human creativity and determination. And here's the kicker. Recent experiments have suggested that this walking theory might not be just a flight of fancy. In fact, some researchers have successfully demonstrated that a small team can indeed make a moai walk, with a coordinated dance of tugging and swaying. The creation and transportation of the moai weren't just acts of artistic expression. They were deeply tied to the social and political fabric of Rapa Nui society. These statues represented the deified ancestors of the islanders, believed to possess spiritual power, or mana, which protected and provided for their descendants. Constructing a moai was like building a stone guardian, a divine insurance policy against the uncertainties of life. The process required not only physical labor, but also the mobilization of social and political resources, turning the whole endeavor into a community project of epic proportions. But let's not get too misty-eyed with this tale of island ingenuity. The reality, as it so often does, throws a bucket of cold water on the romance. The very success of the moai building enterprise may have led to the island's undoing. You see, the construction and transportation of these statues demanded vast amounts of timber, primarily from the island's palm trees. As the moai grew in number and size, the forest dwindled, leading to a catastrophic case of deforestation. By the time Europeans stumbled upon the island in the 18th century, the once lush landscape was reduced to a barren expanse, stripped of its natural resources. This ecological disaster triggered a chain reaction that would send Rapa Nui society spiraling into chaos. With no trees left to build canoes, fishing became a perilous venture and the people's diet suffered. The loss of timber also made it impossible to maintain agriculture at its previous levels, leading to food shortages and, eventually, societal collapse. The islanders, once united in their quest to honor their ancestors, found themselves locked in bitter conflict as rival factions fought for the few remaining resources. It's a grim reminder that human ambition, unchecked, can lead to ruin. A lesson as relevant today as it was then. And yet, the story of Easter Island doesn't end in despair. The islanders, against all odds, adapted to their new reality. They abandoned the moai, leaving them as silent witnesses to the island's turbulent history. The Rapa Nui people survived, albeit in a drastically altered world. Their resilience is a testament to the enduring human spirit, a narrative that challenges the romanticized view of Easter Island as a paradise lost. Instead, it's a cautionary tale, a somber reflection on the limits of human endeavor and the cost of ecological hubris. As historians continue to piece together the puzzle of Easter Island, they're met with more questions than answers. Why did the islanders continue to build statues, even as their society teetered on the brink? Was it stubbornness, faith, or a desperate bid to restore the lost favor of their ancestors? The moai stand as both a triumph of human creativity and a stark reminder of our capacity for self-destruction. It's a paradox that makes Easter Island one of history's most captivating conundrums. And with that, our voyage through the annals of ancient mysteries continues to weave its intricate tapestry. As we sail onward, the seas of history promise yet more secrets to uncover and stories to tell. So, stay tuned, dear adventurers, for the next chapter in this grand exploration of the past. There are more puzzles to unravel, more myths to debunk, and more truths waiting to be unearthed. Now, As we chart a course from the remote vistas of Easter Island to the fertile plains of the ancient Indus Valley, we find ourselves on the doorstep of one of history's most tantalizing mysteries, the undeciphered script of the Indus Valley civilization. This is the kind of enigma that keeps historians awake at night, the sort of puzzle that could put even the most intricate Sudoku to shame. Picture this: a civilization that flourished around 3300 to 1300 BCE, sprawling across what is now Pakistan and northwest India. This society was the size of Mesopotamia and ancient Egypt, yet it remains one of the least understood of the old world powerhouses. We're talking about a culture so advanced it boasted urban planning that would make a modern city planner weep with envy. They had grid-patterned cities, sophisticated drainage systems, and even what might be considered the world's first flush toilets. Yes, they were flushing long before the Romans made it fashionable. But here's the kicker. Despite all this advanced infrastructure, the Indus Valley people left behind a script that's as elusive as a cat in a dog park. We call it the Indus script, and over 4,000 years later, it's still stubbornly silent. This isn't for lack of trying. Scholars have thrown everything at it, from old-school cryptography to cutting-edge AI, all with about as much success as teaching a fish to ride a bicycle. The script itself is intriguing, a collection of over 400 symbols, yet none longer than 26 characters. This brevity has led some to speculate that it's less of a language and more of a symbolic system akin to emojis, highly contextual and reliant on non-textual cues, but without a Rosetta Stone equivalent. A bilingual text that decodes one language into another. We're essentially trying to solve a jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces missing and no picture on the box. The fact that we can't read their script adds an irresistible air of mystery to the Indus Valley civilization. It's like they're whispering to us across the millennia, but the message is scrambled, leaving us to wonder what insights into their world remain locked away in those symbols. Was it a system of trade records, religious texts, or perhaps some early form of poetry? The possibilities are as endless as a politician's promises. Now, let's dig into the archaeological evidence, which paints a picture of a society brimming with economic and cultural vitality. The cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, the civilization's crown jewels, reveal a populace deeply engaged in trade, both locally and with distant lands. Excavations have unearthed artifacts such as seals, pottery, and jewelry, suggesting a thriving economy with a taste for the finer things in life. These seals, often found with the script, depict animals and mythological creatures, hinting at a complex societal structure rich with symbolism and possibly ritualistic significance. The economy of the Indus Valley was a powerhouse, driven by agriculture and trade. Crops like wheat, barley, and possibly rice were cultivated with a level of sophistication that would impress any ancient agronomist. Meanwhile, trade networks stretched as far as Mesopotamia, evidenced by the discovery of Indus Valley goods in Sumerian cities. This interconnectedness suggests a civilization that was not only self-sufficient, but also a formidable player on the world stage. Yet, despite this prosperity, the Indus people left behind no palaces or grandiose monuments. Instead, they opted for functional urban spaces, a testament to their pragmatic, community-oriented ethos. But all good things must come to an end, and around 1900 BCE, the Indus Valley civilization began its decline. Theories abound regarding its fall, ranging from climatic changes to tectonic activities disrupting their river systems. There's also the possibility of invasions, although evidence for this is as scant as the hair on a pharaoh's head. What remains clear is that this once great civilization didn't vanish overnight, but faded gradually, its cities slowly abandoned, leaving behind only tantalizing traces of what once was. And so, the script remains an unsolved riddle, a reminder of just how much of the past is still shrouded in mystery. It's the kind of thing that could drive an archaeologist to distraction, or at the very least, a strong cup of coffee. Yet there's something undeniably alluring about this enigma. It beckons us to keep digging, to keep questioning, much like the other mysteries we've explored on this grand historical tour. As we wrap up our journey through these ancient enigmas, we're left with a profound appreciation for the human spirit's indomitable curiosity. Each mystery, from the Voynich manuscript to the Moai statues, the Great Pyramid, Stonehenge, and now the Indus script, Each stands as a testament to human ingenuity and the relentless pursuit of knowledge. They remind us that while we've come a long way, there's still so much we don't know. These puzzles, unsolved as they are, fuel our imaginations and drive our quest for understanding. They captivate us with their blend of romance and reality, urging us to look beyond the surface and delve into the complex tapestry of human history. And perhaps that's the true allure of these mysteries, not in their solutions, but in the journey they inspire. So, as we close the book on this chapter of ancient riddles, remember that the past is never truly silent. It speaks to us in whispers, in symbols, in stones, and in silence. It challenges us to listen, to learn, and to explore the unknown with the same wonder that has propelled humanity forward for millennia. And who knows? Maybe one day we'll crack these codes, solve these puzzles, and unlock the secrets they hold. Until then, the mystery remains, as does our fascination with the unsolved. If you've ever wondered who the original overachievers of the ancient world were, look no further than the Phoenicians. This was a civilization so obsessed with the sea they practically had gills. Starting around 1500 BCE, they turned the Mediterranean into their personal highway, zigzagging across it with the kind of navigation skills that would make even modern GPS blush. And let's be honest, when you're navigating with nothing but stars and a prayer, you deserve a little credit. Now, let's talk about where these maritime maestros set up shop. Picture the eastern Mediterranean coastline, sunny beaches, strategic ports, and enough cedar to make a lumberjack weep with joy. The Phoenicians were smart cookies. They established their main cities, Tyre, Sidon, and Byblos, right where trade routes converged like a cosmic jackpot. These cities weren't just dots on a map. They were the bustling hubs of a trade empire that stretched from the shores of Lebanon to the far reaches of the known world. Tyre, the crown jewel of Phoenicia, was like the Beyoncé of ancient cities, fabulous and fiercely independent. Known for its production of the much-coveted Tyrian purple dye, it was the place to be if you wanted to flaunt your wealth and status. This dye wasn't just any shade of purple, it was the colour of royalty, and it took tens of thousands of murex snails to produce just an ounce. Talk about labour-intensive. Tyre was a city that understood the power of exclusivity and was more than willing to capitalize on it. Meanwhile, Sidon was the Phoenician city's hipster cousin, known for its glass production. Long before glass-blowing was cool, Sidonians were melting sand and crafting glassware that would make any collector drool. Sidon's glass was so sought after, it became a staple in trade across the Mediterranean. You could say they were the original influencers, spreading their glassy gospel far and wide. Then there was Byblos, the bookworm of the trio, the city that loved papyrus like a modern-day bibliophile loves a first edition. It was here that the Phoenicians mastered the art of writing and record-keeping, pushing the boundaries of literacy. They even gave the world the alphabet, an innovation that was as disruptive as the internet in its day. Take that, Gutenberg. But let's not get carried away with the romance of it all. In reality, these cities were more like competitive siblings than a unified empire. Each city-state was fiercely independent and had its own agenda, leading to more than a few squabbles over trade routes and resources. It's like a family Thanksgiving dinner, where everyone's vying for grandma's best dish. Only here, the stakes were much higher. Think economic dominance and survival. In their quest for maritime supremacy, the Phoenicians weren't just navigating the seas, they were navigating a complex web of political and economic alliances. They had to play nice with powerful neighbours like Egypt and Assyria, all while maintaining their trading networks. Their ability to adapt and thrive in such a turbulent environment is nothing short of remarkable. It's like watching a masterful game of chess, only the board is the entire Mediterranean and the pieces are ships laden with luxury goods. Of course, the Phoenicians' seafaring prowess didn't just happen overnight. It was a result of centuries of innovation and adaptation. They were the first to develop the keel, a game-changer that made their ships faster and more stable. This wasn't just about getting from point A to point B, it was about doing it with style and efficiency. Their ships were the sports cars of the ancient world, sleek and formidable on the open water. And let's not gloss over the fact that the Phoenicians were also master traders. They knew how to strike a deal and get the best bang for their buck, or shekel in this case. They traded everything from timber and textiles to wine and metals, creating a network that was as diverse as it was vast. The Phoenicians were the original globalizers, long before the term was even coined, but with great trade comes great responsibility, or at least a lot of competition. The Mediterranean was a crowded place with plenty of civilizations vying for a piece of the pie. The Greeks, Egyptians, and later the Romans all had their eyes on the lucrative trade routes that the Phoenicians dominated. These rivalries sometimes led to conflict, but the Phoenicians were nothing if not resilient. They knew how to keep their friends close and their enemies closer, using their diplomatic skills to navigate the choppy waters of international relations. In the end, the Phoenicians were more than just skilled sailors and shrewd traders. They were pioneers who laid the groundwork for future civilizations. Their legacy is a testament to the power of innovation and adaptability in the face of adversity. So the next time you use your GPS to find your way, spare a thought for the Phoenicians who navigated the open seas with nothing but the stars to guide them, and did it with a style and flair that would make any modern adventurer green with envy. Now, speaking of navigation without GPS, let's dive into the Phoenician trade routes, a veritable labyrinth of sea lanes that would make even the most seasoned modern sailor break into a cold sweat. These routes stretched like a well-worn map of ambition, from the eastern Mediterranean all the way to the far reaches of the Iberian Peninsula. Imagine this: you're on a Phoenician ship, bobbing along the waves, the wind in your sails, and a stern-faced captain barking orders in a language peppered with nautical jargon and the occasional curse. Your mission? To transport luxury goods like the famed Tyrian purple dye across distances that would make your Fitbit explode from counting the steps. Let's geek out over the numbers for a second. A round trip from Tyre to Carthage covered about 1,000 miles, give or take a detour to avoid pirates or, other inconvenient maritime hazards. The journey wasn't just a leisurely cruise. This was ancient shipping on steroids. Your cargo hold would be packed with amphorae brimming with olive oil wine and that precious Tyrian purple dye extracted from murex snails with the delicacy of a neurosurgeon and the patience of a saint. The dye itself was like liquid gold, and the Phoenicians knew it. A pound of it could fetch the equivalent of a year's wages for a skilled worker. Talk about a lucrative racket. But this was no easy sail. The Mediterranean Sea, while picturesque, was as unpredictable as a reality TV reunion. 1 minute, you're gliding along the coast of Crete. The next, you're battling Poseidon's wrath in the form of a raging storm. And forget about a cohesive weather app. These guys relied on more rudimentary forecasts, like the color of the sky at sunset or the flight patterns of birds. Not exactly Noah approved, but it got the job done most of the time. When it came to striking deals and brokering trade agreements, the Phoenicians were the original power brokers. Their negotiation tactics were as sharp as a sailor's knife, honed by centuries of haggling and schmoozing. They knew how to play the game, leveraging their extensive network of trade contacts like a LinkedIn influencer with an MBA in hustle. They didn't just trade goods, they traded influence and information, greasing the wheels of commerce with a savvy that would make any modern entrepreneur nod in appreciation. Of course, the romantic notion of the Phoenicians as fearless adventurers glosses over a few, shall we say, less glamorous realities. For one, life on a Phoenician ship was not exactly a pleasure cruise. Cramped conditions, limited rations, and the constant threat of piracy made for a workplace environment that would make OSHA cringe. Forget luxury liners with all-you-can-eat buffets. This was survival of the fittest, with a side of scurvy if you weren't careful. Yet, despite the hardships, the Phoenicians thrived. Their secret? An uncanny ability to adapt to changing circumstances, whether it was dodging a hostile fleet or negotiating trade terms with a prickly city-state. They were the ultimate pragmatists, always ready to pivot and seize new opportunities. In a world where alliances could shift as quickly as the tides, the Phoenicians navigated the complex web of politics and commerce with the finesse of a gymnast on a balance beam. Now, let's talk about the economic tactics that made them the titans of trade. They weren't just hauling goods from point A to point B, they were creating demand and shaping markets like the original supply chain masterminds. Take the Tyrian purple, for example, a product that was as much about branding as it was about color. By controlling production and distribution, the Phoenicians turned it into a symbol of status and power, coveted by elites from Babylon to Rome. It was a lesson in scarcity and desirability that would make any modern marketer swoon. But their economic savvy didn't stop there. They were also pioneers in establishing trade colonies, like the formidable Carthage, which acted as both a strategic outpost and a thriving commercial hub. These colonies weren't just extensions of Phoenician cities. They were autonomous entities that contributed to a vast, interconnected network of trade. It was globalization before globalization was cool, with the Phoenicians weaving a web of commerce that spanned continents and cultures. Yet, behind the glamour of their trade empire lay a reality check. This was a world where diplomacy was as crucial as the goods they traded. The Mediterranean was a crowded marketplace, with every power from the Greeks to the Egyptians eyeing the Phoenician trade routes like a shopper in a Black Friday sale. The Phoenicians had to navigate these choppy waters with a mix of charm, cunning, and the occasional show of force. Their ability to maintain independence amidst such stiff competition was nothing short of miraculous. And while the romantic image of the Phoenician trader as an intrepid explorer endures, it's worth remembering that their success was built on hard-nosed business practices, strategic alliances, and a willingness to adapt to a constantly changing world. They were the original disruptors, carving out a niche in a competitive market and leaving a legacy that would echo through the ages. As we wrap up this chapter of our Phoenician tale, remember, behind the myths and legends, there were real people navigating real challenges with all the tenacity and ingenuity of a Silicon Valley startup. Their story is one of innovation, resilience, and adaptability, a testament to the enduring spirit of human enterprise. And while the Mediterranean may no longer be the bustling hub of trade it once was, the lessons of the Phoenicians continue to resonate, reminding us of the power of ambition and the art of the deal. And speaking of ambitious Phoenician traders who could give modern entrepreneurs a run for their money, let's steer our ship toward the political waters they navigated. Forget about the Hollywood version of ancient diplomacy, where civilizations held hands and sang Kumbaya. In reality, the political landscape was as cutthroat as a high-stakes poker game, with the Phoenicians playing their cards close to the vest and occasionally bluffing their way to survival. First up, let's drop anchor in the 9th century BCE, when the Assyrians, led by King Shalmaneser III, decided they wanted a piece of the Phoenician pie. In A41 BCE, Tyre and Sidon, those sister cities with sibling rivalry vibes, found themselves writing their own tribute checks to Assyria. Imagine forking over silver and goods to a swaggering neighbour with a penchant for empire building. Not exactly the highlight of their year, but hey, it was either that or face the pointy end of an Assyrian spear. These tributes weren't just inconvenient taxes, they were a strategic maneuver to keep the peace, or at least a semblance of it. The Phoenicians were shrewd enough to realize that sometimes staying under the radar was the best way to keep their trade routes open and their cities intact. It was a classic case of keep your friends close and your enemies closer, because nobody wants to see a hostile takeover in their backyard. But let's not paint the Assyrians as the sole villains in this historical drama. The Egyptians, with their own imperial aspirations, were just as eager to dip their toes into the Mediterranean's commercial waters. The Phoenicians had to balance their allegiances like a tightrope walker on a windy day. They traded freely with Egypt, providing them with cedar wood for their monumental building projects, while maintaining just enough distance to avoid becoming another province on the pharaoh's extensive list of conquests. The Egyptians and the Phoenicians had a relationship that was anything but straightforward. Sure, there was mutual benefit, but there was also an undercurrent of competition and distrust. Picture two frenemies who begrudgingly collaborate on a project, each secretly hoping to outshine the other. The Egyptians had their eyes on Phoenician trade routes and harbours, while the Phoenicians were keen on accessing Egypt's wealth and resources. It was a delicate dance of diplomacy, where one wrong step could lead to economic disaster. Now, let's switch gears and talk about the myth of Phoenician harmony. Ancient records, often penned by those with a vested interest in painting a rosy picture, would have us believe these city-states were bastions of peace and prosperity. But scratch beneath the surface, and you'll find a simmering pot of rivalry and tension. Each city-state was fiercely independent, more inclined to compete than cooperate. It was less United Nations and more Game of Thrones minus the dragons. Tyre, for instance, wasn't about to let Sidon or Byblos steal its thunder. The Tyrians were determined to remain the top dog in the region, leveraging their mastery of trade and manufacturing to maintain their edge. Meanwhile, Sidon and Byblos had their own agendas, often clashing with Tyre over who got the best deals and the most lucrative trade routes. It's the ancient equivalent of a corporate turf war, with each city-state vying for market dominance. But here's the kicker. Despite their internal squabbles, the Phoenicians knew when to set aside their differences for the greater good. When external threats loomed large, these city-states could rally together in a show of unity that was as impressive as it was rare. It wasn't quite a hallmark moment, but it was enough to keep their trade networks alive and their enemies at bay. So, what's the takeaway from this political intrigue? The Phoenicians were masters of adaptation, playing the Game of Thrones with a cunning that would make even Machiavelli nod in approval. They understood that survival in a volatile world required flexibility, diplomacy, and a dash of deception. In their world, alliances were as fluid as the waters they sailed, and the ability to pivot was the difference between prosperity and obliteration. And while their story is often romanticized as one of peaceful trading and cultural exchange, the reality is far more complex. Not unlike today's geopolitical landscape, the Phoenicians' legacy is a testament to the power of strategic thinking and the art of negotiation. They weren't just traders, they were political chameleons, adept at navigating the shifting sands of power dynamics with the precision of a seasoned diplomat. As we continue to unravel the tapestry of Phoenician history, remember that behind every myth of harmony lies a reality check. The Phoenicians thrived not because they were the darlings of diplomacy, but because they were the ultimate pragmatists, willing to make tough choices in a world that demanded nothing less. So, the next time you hear about the harmonious relationships of ancient civilizations, take a page out of the Phoenician playbook and question the narrative. After all, history is written by the survivors, and the Phoenicians were nothing if not survivors. And speaking of survivors who could teach modern-day politicians a thing or two, let's dive into the cultural ripples the Phoenicians set in motion across the Mediterranean, a region they transformed as much with their ideas as with their cargo. Now, if you thought their knack for trade was impressive, their cultural influence is going to blow your toga off. First up, let's give a shout-out to the Phoenician alphabet. Yes, that's right. The very letters you're reading right now have their roots in a system developed by these ancient trailblazers. Around 1050 BCE, the Phoenicians crafted a 22-character alphabet that was as revolutionary as the smartphone, streamlined, efficient, and ready to disrupt the status quo. This nifty innovation spread faster than ancient gossip, eventually morphing into Greek, Latin, and, well, pretty much every Western script we use today. So, next time you jot down a grocery list, you might as well thank the Phoenicians. They made writing accessible, paving the way for everything from epic poetry to passive-aggressive emails. But wait, there's more to their cultural legacy than just A to Z. The Phoenicians were cultural magpies, collecting and trading ideas like they were rare trinkets. Their trade routes were highways of cultural exchange, where everything from religious practices to artistic styles got swapped around like baseball cards. Ever notice how some ancient Mediterranean deities have striking similarities? That's no coincidence. The Phoenicians were spiritual trendsetters, bringing bits of their own pantheon wherever they docked. Melkart, the Tyrian god, was basically Hercules' OG influencer. His cult spread throughout their trade network, becoming a household name from Cyprus to Spain. And speaking of Spain, the Phoenicians didn't just drop by for a quick siesta. They left a lasting mark on the Iberian Peninsula, founding colonies like Gadir, modern-day Cadiz, around 1100 BCE. These outposts were more than just trading posts. They were cultural melting pots, where Phoenician and local Iberian traditions mingled like guests at a particularly lively cocktail party. The result? A rich tapestry of cultural fusion that would influence the region for centuries. Of course, it wasn't all kumbaya and cultural exchange. The Phoenicians weren't above a little cultural appropriation, borrowing ideas, tweaking them, and calling them their own. It's the kind of cultural remixing that would make a DJ proud, but not everyone was thrilled. There were tensions too, as local populations sometimes resisted the Phoenician way of doing things. Archaeological evidence suggests that not every colony was a hit. Some were abandoned after a few decades, likely due to conflicts or economic downturns. It turns out not everyone was ready for the Phoenician cultural revolution. Now, let's bust a myth or two. You might have heard legends of Phoenician society as a utopia of peace and prosperity, where everyone basked in the glow of shared knowledge and mutual respect. Yeah, not quite. In reality, Phoenician society was as hierarchical as a corporate ladder. The elites, those who controlled the trade and the means of production, lived in luxury, while the lower classes toiled away, often in harsh conditions. Slavery was a grim reality too, as the Phoenicians weren't above using forced labour to keep their trade empire humming. Archaeological digs have unearthed remains that tell tales of inequality and hardship, painting a picture that's far less rosy than the legends suggest. But, despite the social stratification, the Phoenicians managed to foster a sense of shared identity that transcended their city-states. It was a cultural glue, stronger than any political alliance, that bound them together in the face of external threats. They might have been rivals in trade, but culturally they were united in their quest to spread their influence across the Mediterranean's blue expanses. And let's not forget their culinary impact. The Phoenicians were the original foodies, introducing Mediterranean staples like olives and grapes to new regions. They didn't just trade goods, they traded flavors, enriching the diets of countless communities. Imagine the first time a Greek tasted Phoenician imported olive oil. It's the ancient equivalent of discovering a new cuisine that changes the way you think about food. In many ways, the Phoenicians were the culinary bridge between East and West, blending flavors and techniques into a delectable stew of cultural exchange. So, what's the big takeaway here? The Phoenicians were cultural brokers par excellence, spreading ideas and innovations like a Mediterranean breeze. They were the ancient world's equivalent of social media influencers, shaping tastes, trends, and traditions wherever they went. Their legacy is a reminder that culture isn't static. It's a living, breathing entity that evolves and adapts, much like the Phoenicians themselves. As we sail toward the final chapters of Phoenician history, let's remember that their story is not just one of trade and politics, but of profound cultural impact. They were the unsung architects of the ancient world, building bridges, not just of commerce, but of culture, that connected disparate civilizations. And while we may never fully unravel all the mysteries of their society, the echoes of their influence continue to resonate, reminding us of the enduring power of cultural exchange in shaping our world. As we sail toward the final chapters of Phoenician history, let's remember that their story is not just about trade and politics, but about profound cultural impact. They were the unsung architects of the ancient world, building bridges not just of commerce, but of culture, that connected disparate civilizations. And while we may never fully unravel all the mysteries of their society, the echoes of their influence continue to resonate, reminding us of the enduring power of cultural exchange in shaping our world. But, as the saying goes, all good things must come to an end. Into Rome, stage left. The Roman Empire, with its insatiable appetite for expansion, wasn't content to let Phoenicia sail the Mediterranean seas unchallenged. By the 3rd century BCE, the Romans were making serious power moves, and the Phoenicians found themselves in the crosshairs. It was like watching a small business get steamrolled by a global conglomerate, only instead of hostile takeovers and boardroom battles, there were fleets and legions. The turning point came with the rise of Carthage, a Phoenician colony that had grown into a formidable power in its own right. Carthage was the Phoenicians' answer to Rome's burgeoning empire, a city that boasted a navy so vast it could blot out the sun. But the Punic Wars, fought between Rome and Carthage from 264 to 146 BCE, would be the stage for one of history's most epic showdowns. Spoiler alert, Rome emerged victorious, and Carthage fell, taking with it Phoenicia's last great hope for maintaining dominance in the Mediterranean. It was the end of an era, the fall of a once mighty trade empire that had turned the Mediterranean into its personal playground. So, what happened to the Phoenicians afterward? Well, like many civilizations, they faded into the background, their cities absorbed into the Roman Empire. But this wasn't just a case of being conquered and forgotten. The legacy of the Phoenicians lived on, woven into the fabric of the very empire that had eclipsed them. Their alphabet continued to spread, evolving into the Latin script that would become the backbone of Western literacy. Their trade networks, now under Roman control, continued to flourish, laying the groundwork for what we might call the first true global economy. And let's talk about their cultural contributions. The Phoenicians were like the cultural composters of the ancient world, taking the best bits from various cultures, mixing them together, and creating something entirely new. Their blend of religions, languages, and artistic styles influenced the Romans, who were nothing if not avid cultural appropriators themselves. From art to architecture, the Phoenicians left a mark that was as indelible as it was widespread. It's as if their echoes reverberated throughout history, quietly influencing the world's greatest empire without needing to shout from the rooftops. But here's the kicker. Despite their decline, the Phoenicians' influence is still felt today. Consider the modern alphabet, a direct descendant of their ingenious script, or the global trade networks that span our planet, a legacy of their pioneering spirit. Even the concept of cultural fusion, once considered exotic, is now a staple of global society, thanks in part to the Phoenicians' trailblazing efforts. Now, let's debunk a popular myth, the notion that the Phoenicians were merely traders with no real cultural value. Sure, they didn't write epic poetry like Homer, or build colossal structures like the Egyptians. But they did something arguably more important. They connected the ancient world, creating a network of exchange that fostered innovation and progress. Their legacy is a reminder that influence isn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes, it's the subtle currents beneath the surface that leave the most lasting impact. Reflecting on the decline of Phoenician trade dominance is a bit like watching a classic underdog story with a twist. The scrappy hero doesn't win in the end, but their influence endures in unexpected ways. They may have been overshadowed by Rome's grandeur and Greece's philosophy, but the Phoenicians' true triumph was their ability to shape the world quietly through commerce, culture, and connectivity. In the grand tapestry of history, the Phoenicians are a thread that may not always be visible, but is undeniably vital. Their story is a testament to the power of connectivity, adaptability, and innovation, a narrative that is as relevant today as it was in antiquity. So, the next time you marvel at the globalized world we live in, spare a thought for the Phoenicians who laid the foundations long before the term global village was even imagined. As we wrap up our exploration of this remarkable civilization, let's remember them not just as merchants of the Mediterranean, but as pioneers of human connection. Their legacy is a reminder that sometimes the most profound contributions come not from the loudest voices or the grandest gestures, but from those who dare to bridge divides and create something new. Here's to the Phoenicians, the original navigators of the sea and of the human spirit. The sun rises over the dense, emerald canopy of the Chiapas jungle, casting a golden hue on the limestone ruins of Palenque. You're not just any observer here, you're a Mayan priest, and the morning's first light is your cue to begin a day steeped in ritual and responsibility. There's no snooze button when the gods await. Your morning ritual kicks off with a brisk plunge into the sacred waters, a baptism of sorts to cleanse both body and spirit, because nothing says, "I'm ready to connect with the divine," like a splash of cold water. Ritual purification is not just a suggestion, it's a mandate. As you emerge, droplets glistening on your skin like tiny jewels of life, remember, this isn't just about spiritual hygiene. It's a societal expectation, a cleansing of the old self to make room for today's divine duties. Let's talk about fasting, a word that might make your modern self shudder. No, it's not some trendy diet plan, it's a spiritual and physical discipline. You abstain from food to honor the gods, heightening your spiritual awareness. Hunger isn't just a physical sensation, it's a reminder that your earthly needs are secondary to celestial duties. You feel the tug of your stomach, but it's a small price to pay for divine favor. Now, as you prepare for the day, you can't help but notice the bustling city around you. Palenque isn't just a collection of impressive pyramids, it's a vibrant hub of trade and culture. You can almost hear the clinking of jade beads and the rustle of cacao leaves in the market. Jade, cacao, and obsidian aren't just luxury items, they're the lifeblood of the economy. These goods flow through trade routes that stretch across the Yucatan Peninsula and beyond, connecting distant lands and diverse cultures. Palenque's wealth doesn't just grow on trees, it travels on the backs of merchants and traders. As a priest, your role in this bustling economy is as crucial as it is complex. Yes, you're a spiritual leader, but you're also a key player in the economic game. Your role involves overseeing the trade routes, ensuring that the goods vital for rituals and ceremonies keep flowing. You might not be haggling in the marketplace, but your influence helps shape the city's prosperity. It's a delicate balance, this intersection of the spiritual and the material, and you walk it daily. And let's not forget the political intricacies. Kinich Janab, Pakal, the great ruler of Palenque, expects nothing less than perfection in every ceremony. Your rituals aren't just about appeasing the gods, they're also about affirming Pakal's divine right to rule. You're part of the PR machine that keeps the populace believing that their leader is chosen by the gods themselves. No pressure, right? By mid-morning, your duties lead you to the temple precincts. The architecture here isn't just about aesthetics. It's an expression of power and devotion. The Temple of the Inscriptions looms large, a stone testament to Pakal's legacy. As you climb its steep steps, you can almost hear the whispers of history echoing in the corridors. The stone carvings and hieroglyphs you pass aren't just art, they're political statements, records of victories, treaties, and divine endorsements. In the midst of your duties, a thought crosses your mind. The romantic notion of the priest as a serene, meditative figure is a far cry from your reality. Your life is a constant juggling act of politics, economics, and spirituality. The myths might paint a picture of serene devotion, but the truth is far messier and infinitely more fascinating. Your afternoon is filled with ceremonies and consultations, each one a careful blend of tradition and innovation. You advise the city's leaders, interpret celestial events, and ensure that the rituals are flawless. Each action, each word, must be precise. After all, the balance of the world rests on your shoulders. Or at least, that's what everyone else believes. As you pause to catch your breath and take in the grandeur of your surroundings, you're reminded that being a priest in Palenque is as much about serving the community as it is about communing with the gods. The legends might focus on the divine connections and mystical insights, but you know the truth. Your day-to-day is a tapestry woven with threads of power, politics, and pragmatism. And as the sun begins its descent, casting long shadows over the jungle, you brace yourself for the evening's rituals, knowing that each moment is a dance between the mundane and the mystical. As the sun hovers overhead, casting its warm embrace over the city, you find yourself navigating the labyrinth of political power in Palenque. Welcome to the circus, where the acts are grander, the stakes are higher, and the performers wear ceremonial garb rather than clown shoes. You're not just an observer here, you're part of the performance, a key player in the daily drama orchestrated by King Kinich Janabas Pakal. Ah, Pakal. Let's talk about this legendary king for a moment. He ascended to the throne at the ripe age of 12 in 615 CE, a fact that makes one wonder if there were any royal babysitters involved. Today, he's not just a ruler, he's a symbol, a semi-divine figure in the eyes of the people. It's your job, as a priest, to ensure that symbol shines brightly. You see, the relationship between the priesthood and the ruling class is less about spiritual enlightenment and more about maintaining balance, like two tightrope walkers leaning on each other to avoid a spectacular fall. Your morning rendezvous takes you to the palace, a sprawling complex that is as much a seat of power as it is a testament to human ambition. The palace is no mere building, it's a statement, with its intricate stucco panels and elaborate carvings that could rival any modern art gallery. Here, the air is thick with intrigue and ambition, each corridor echoing with whispers of power plays and political maneuvering. Forget the serene image of priests meditating in quiet corners. You're here to mingle, to advise, to ensure the king's celestial mandate remains unchallenged. Now, let's debunk a myth, the notion of a divine, untouchable king ruling by sheer will of the gods. Romantic, yes, but the reality is far more complex. Pakal's power doesn't just rest on divine favor. It hinges on alliances, on the backing of powerful nobles and the priesthood, and on the successful execution of political ceremonies. These ceremonies are not just about reciting prayers and making offerings, they're about reinforcing Pakal's legitimacy, a constant reminder to his subjects that his rule is both ordained and inevitable. And that's where you come in. Your role in these ceremonies is crucial, not just as a spiritual guide, but as a political operative. You're the bridge between the divine and the mundane, ensuring that rituals align with political objectives. Take, for example, the elaborate ceremonies held in the Temple of the Inscriptions, Pakal's final resting place and a monument to his reign. You're not just conducting rituals here, you're scripting a narrative, crafting a story in which Pakal is the hero anointed by the gods. But let's get real for a moment. These ceremonies, for all their grandeur, are also a matter of logistics. They require resources. Obsidian knives for sacrifices, jade and turquoise for adornment, cacao for offerings. The economics of ritual are no small matter, with these items sourced through a complex web of trade routes. As a priest, you're not just a ceremonial figure, you're an economic strategist, ensuring that the flow of goods aligns with the ceremonial calendar. Forget the image of a priest as an ascetic. In Palenque, you're more akin to a corporate executive, balancing the books and managing assets to ensure the divine wheels keep turning. In the grand hall where decisions that shape the city are made, you stand alongside Pakal and his advisors. You're not just a bystander here, your input is valued, your voice heard. It's a delicate dance, this interplay of power, where every word, every gesture is laden with meaning. You're aware that your influence can sway decisions, that your interpretations of celestial signs can determine the course of policies. It's a heady mix of spiritual insight and political acumen that keeps you on your toes. Let's not forget the realpolitik behind the sacred facade. The alliances you forge, the support you garner from the nobility and other priests, are all part of the broader political landscape. In the world of Palenque, power is a currency, and you're trading in it every day. Your role is not just to interpret the will of the gods, but to ensure that the will of Pakal aligns with it, a task that requires both diplomatic finesse and a keen understanding of human nature. As you navigate these political waters, you're acutely aware of the myths that swirl around you. The romantic image of the priest as a disinterested spiritual guide is a far cry from the truth. You're a player in a high-stakes game where the lines between the sacred and the secular blur, where power and spirituality intersect in fascinating and often unpredictable ways. In this world, every move matters, every decision is calculated. You're not just maintaining traditions, you're shaping them, adapting them to fit the political landscape. It's a testament to the dynamic nature of Mayan society, a reminder that history is not just a series of static events, but a living, breathing tapestry of human ambition and belief. As the day progresses and you continue your duties, you carry with you the weight of your role, the knowledge that you are both a servant and a shaper of history. In the heart of Palenque, amidst the grandeur and the ceremony, you are a linchpin, a necessary force in the ever-turning wheel of power and faith. And so, with each step you take, each word you utter, you contribute to the legacy of a civilization that, despite the myths and legends, was as complex and compelling as any modern society. As the sun begins its descent, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, you prepare for the next chapter in this ongoing saga, your place secure in the annals of Palenque's history. And so, as the sky transitions into a dazzling midday canvas, let's dive into the spiritual duties that make up a Mayan priest's bread and butter, or rather maize and cacao. As the sun reaches its zenith, casting rays like celestial spotlights on Palenque, you find yourself at the heart of your spiritual calling. Forget what you've seen in Hollywood or read in dime store novels. This isn't some mystical, leisurely stroll through the divine. It's more like spiritual boot camp, with less barking and more chanting. First up on today's celestial agenda, performing rituals. Now, if you're picturing a group of priests chanting in unison while holding hands and swaying gently, think again. Mayan rituals are elaborate affairs, carefully choreographed performances that rival any modern-day Broadway production. They're all about precision, timing, and a hefty dose of symbolism. And unlike the local community theatre, these performances have the power to sway the hearts of the gods, or so everyone hopes. Your role? You're the conductor of this divine orchestra, ensuring every incense burner is lit and every chant is perfectly timed. But hold that romantic notion. These rituals are not just about pleasing the deities. They're the linchpin of the city's very existence, a spiritual insurance policy against the chaos of the cosmos. In a world where droughts and disasters loom like hungry jaguars, these rituals are as practical as they are mystical. Speaking of myths, let's tackle the big one, human sacrifice. It's the elephant in the archaeological room, the headline that captures imaginations and sends shivers down spines. Yes, the Mayans practiced it, but let's not paint with too broad a brush. Human sacrifice was not an everyday occurrence. It was more like the nuclear option in a spiritual war chest, reserved for those times when the stakes were sky high. The real bread and butter, or maize and cacao if you prefer, of Mayan rituals was bloodletting. A little grotesque perhaps, but it was a key component of their spiritual practice. The idea was simple. Blood was the ultimate offering, a life force that connected the human and divine realms. In a world where the gods were thought to have sacrificed themselves to create humanity, returning the favor in small doses seemed only fair. So you, as a priest, might perform bloodletting on yourself, drawing a few drops to maintain cosmic harmony. It's a practice that makes your average paper cut seem like child's play. And let's not forget the astronomical knowledge that guided these rituals. You're not just a priest, you're an ancient astronomer, wielding celestial maps like a modern-day Google Calendar. The Mayans were keen observers of the heavens, tracking celestial bodies with an accuracy that would make even NASA blush. You use this astronomical intel to time your rituals with cosmic events, ensuring the stars themselves align with your spiritual endeavors. The Mayan calendar, a mathematical marvel, is your constant companion in this celestial dance. It's not just a tool for marking time, it's a complex system that connects earthly events with cosmic cycles. Imagine juggling the Zolkin, a 260-day sacred calendar, and the Harbs, a 36-5-day solar calendar, not to mention the long count, which tracks longer cycles of time. It's enough to make your head spin, but for you, it's all in a day's work. This deep connection between the heavens and the earth is what makes your role so critical. The rituals you perform aren't just spiritual obligations, they're acts of cosmic diplomacy, ensuring that the divine forces remain in harmony with the human world. It's a delicate balance, one that requires not just faith, but a keen understanding of astronomy, mathematics, and mythology. But let's not romanticize this too much. The life of a Mayan priest is no monastic retreat. It's a constant hustle, balancing the expectations of the gods with the demands of the people. In a society where the spiritual and the secular are deeply intertwined, your role is both revered and scrutinized. Every ritual, every alignment with the stars is a testament to your expertise and a test of your mettle. As the sun blazes high in the sky and the weight of your duties presses down like the humid jungle air, you take a moment to reflect. You're not just maintaining traditions, you're shaping them, ensuring they evolve to meet the ever-changing demands of your society. It's a testament to the dynamic nature of Mayan culture, where history is a living, breathing force rather than a static relic of the past. In this role, you are both a guardian of ancient wisdom and a pioneer of new insights. The myths may paint you as a serene, detached figure, but the reality is far more engaging. You're a player in a high-stakes game where the lines between the sacred and the secular blur, where power and spirituality intersect in fascinating and often unpredictable ways. So as you prepare for the next ritual, the next alignment of stars and sacraments, remember this: you are not just a bridge between worlds, you are a force that shapes them, a linchpin in the ever-turning wheel of Mayan history. And as the sun begins its descent, casting long shadows over Palenque, you gear up for the evening's rituals, confident in your place within this grand cosmic tapestry. The day is far from over, and you, dear priest, are far from done. As the sun begins to dip, painting the jungles of Palenque in hues of gold and amber, your duties shift from celestial choreography to the intellectual realm. It's time to swap your priestly robes for the metaphorical chalk and slate of an educator. Picture yourself now as the ancient equivalent of a TED Talk speaker, but with more feathers and less PowerPoint. The youth of Palenque, particularly the elite, are your audience, eager sponges ready to soak up the wisdom that you, a guardian of Mayan knowledge, are here to impart. Education in 7th century Palenque isn't just a footnote in a history book. It's a cornerstone of society, a vital cog in the machine that keeps the city-state thriving. And you, dear priest, are at the helm of this intellectual ship. Your classroom? The open-air courtyards of the temples, where the scent of copal incense mingles with the jungle's earthy aroma and the stone walls echo with the voices of eager young minds. Let's start with the curriculum. Mathematics, astronomy, theology. You're not just teaching subjects, you're sculpting the minds that will one day navigate Palenque's complex political and spiritual landscapes. Forget the abacus, we're talking about a base 20 number system here, sophisticated long before anyone in Europe thought to use zero. And don't even get me started on the calendar system, a feat of arithmetic and astronomical precision that would make a modern-day mathematician weep with envy. Ah, astronomy, the ancient Mayan obsession. You're not just discussing the stars, you're teaching these kids how to read the heavens like a cosmic newspaper. They learn to track Venus, which isn't just a bright spot in the sky, but a celestial player in the intricate game of Mayan prophecy and ritual. And here's a juicy tidbit. These lessons are not just academic. They're a kind of celestial insurance that ensures future leaders can interpret omens and align their rule with the will of the gods. Talk about a syllabus with stakes. But let's not gloss over the tools of your trade. Codices, those ancient accordion-folded books made from the inner bark of fig trees, are your textbooks. Decorated with vibrant glyphs and illustrations, they're the Google Maps, encyclopedias, and dictionaries of your time, all rolled into one. With the stroke of a quill, you bring to life the stories of gods and heroes, teachings that have been passed down through generations. Oral tradition is the glue that binds this society together, and it's your job to ensure these stories don't just survive, but thrive. You weave tales of creation and destruction, of gods and mortals, each story a thread in the rich tapestry of Mayan culture. In a world without Wikipedia, oral tradition is the lifeline of history, a living archive that keeps the past alive. But here's where things get interesting. You're not just preserving knowledge, you're innovating. The Mayans are not static, stuck in the past. They are constantly adapting, evolving their understanding of the cosmos and the world around them. You encourage your students to question, to explore, to push the boundaries of what is known. It's a dynamic process, this education, one that requires as much from you as it gives to them. And let's not forget the economic angle. Knowledge isn't free after all. The education you provide is a privilege, reserved for the elite whose families can afford to pay tribute in cacao, jade, or precious textiles. It's a stark reminder that in this society, as in all societies, education is both a tool and a commodity. The societal importance of this knowledge transfer is immense. By educating the elite, you're ensuring that Palenque remains a powerhouse, a beacon of culture and science. These young minds are the future bureaucrats, priests and rulers who will carry the torch of innovation and tradition. They're the ones who will ensure that Palenque continues to shine brightly on the canvas of the ancient world. But let's not romanticize too much. The path of education is fraught with challenges. You must navigate the delicate balance of tradition and progress, ensuring that the knowledge you impart remains relevant in a rapidly changing world. It's a high-wire act, this balancing of past and future, one that requires both vision and pragmatism. As you wrap up today's lessons and watch the students disperse, you feel the weight of your role. You're not just a teacher, you're a custodian of wisdom, a cultivator of the future. And as the sun sets and the shadows lengthen, you prepare for the evening ceremonies, confident in the knowledge that you are shaping not just minds, but the very destiny of Palenque. So here's to you, the ancient educator, the priestly professor of Palenque, holding the torch of knowledge high in a world where light and dark, past and future, dance in eternal interplay. As the stars begin to twinkle above, you know your work is far from over. There are always more lessons to teach, more stories to tell, and more futures to shape in this vibrant, dynamic civilization. As the stars start to peek through the velvet curtain of night, you, the venerable Mayan priest, find yourself reflecting on the legacy you've helped to shape. It's a moment to ponder your place in a world that's as dynamic as it is daunting. The sun's retreat marks not just the end of the day, but the beginning of a deeper contemplation, one that stretches from the here and now to the distant horizons of history. Let's face it, Palenque in its heyday was the Mayan equivalent of a bustling metropolis, a center of power and culture. But like any great city, it wasn't immune to the ticking clock of change. By the late 8th century, the political landscape of the Mayan world was shifting more than tectonic plates in an earthquake. Neighboring city-states were rising, making alliances that were as fragile as a quetzal's feather. The once mighty Palenque found itself in a precarious dance with these new powers. Some would argue it was a waltz, others might say it was more of a limbo, always trying to avoid hitting the floor. Ah, but the allure of power is intoxicating, isn't it? Palenque's rulers, including our old friend King Pakal, were experts at using religion as a tool for political legitimacy. But as new players entered the game, the rules began to change. The priests, keepers of celestial wisdom and divine intermediaries, were suddenly not just spiritual guides but political strategists. You, dear priest, were tasked with navigating these turbulent waters, a task akin to steering a canoe through a hurricane while reciting poetry. And let's not gloss over the economics of it all. Palenque's economy thrived on trade, with jade and obsidian glistening as the currency of choice. But trading routes are as fickle as the gods themselves, and with new powers came new trade agreements, often cutting Palenque out of the loop faster than a Mayan scribe could carve a glyph. Suddenly, the city's prosperity was not just a matter of divine favor, but of economic savvy. The priesthood found itself balancing the spiritual scales while keeping an eye on the treasury, a juggling act that could make even the most seasoned circus performer break a sweat. As you gaze up at the stars, those steadfast sentinels of the night sky, you're reminded of your role as both an observer and a participant in this cosmic drama. The heavens may be eternal, but earthly kingdoms are not. The myth of the eternal empire is just that, a myth. Palenque, like all great cities, would eventually face decline, a fact as inevitable as the sunrise. The reasons were many: resource depletion, overpopulation, and those pesky trade routes shifting like sand in the wind. The irony of it all is that while the Mayans were masters of time with their intricate calendars, they couldn't halt the march of history itself. Yet, even in decline, the legacy of the Mayan priesthood is undeniable. You might not have built the towering temples or carved the intricate stelae, but your influence was etched into the very fabric of society. Your rituals, your teachings, have a way of outlasting even the most durable of stones. The stories you told, the knowledge you shared, became the threads of a culture that would linger long after the last temple had crumbled. But let's not get too misty-eyed. The reality of life as a Mayan priest was often as grim as it was glorious. The myths paint a picture of serene wisdom, but the truth was a relentless grind of duty and expectation. There were days when the divine seemed more distant than the farthest star, when the weight of tradition pressed down like a storm cloud. Yet it was in those moments of doubt that the true strength of the priesthood shone through. You persevered, not just as a guardian of the past, but as a beacon for the future. As the night deepens, you can almost hear the whispers of the jungle, a reminder of the natural world that was always just beyond the city's stone walls. The Mayans understood better than most that humanity is just one part of a much larger tapestry. It's a lesson that resonates even today, in a world that often forgets the delicate balance of nature and civilization. So, as you prepare to turn in for the night, consider this. Your legacy is not just in the rituals performed or the knowledge imparted, but in the resilience and adaptability that defined your life. You were a pioneer in a world of uncertainty, a master of both the celestial and the terrestrial. The myths may tell one story, but the truth is that your place in history is as complex and compelling as the stars themselves. In the end, the story of the Mayan priesthood is not one of static tradition, but of continual evolution. It's a reminder that history is not just a series of events, but a living narrative, one that we each contribute to in our own way. And as you drift into sleep, with the gentle rustle of the jungle as your lullaby, remember that your story, like the stories of those who came before, continues to shape the world long after the last candle has been extinguished. Li Bai entered the world in 701 AD, right in the heart of the Tang dynasty's golden era, where poetry was practically a national sport. Born in Sriye, a place that today would be somewhere in Kyrgyzstan, he was already off to a unique start. The Tang dynasty, with its bustling silk-filled bazaars and camel caravans, was the epicenter of trade and culture. It was a place where the East met the West in a heady blend of fragrances, fabrics, and ideas. Li Bai's birthplace was no backwater. It was a veritable melting pot, and his multicultural upbringing would later infuse his poetry with a flavor as rich as the spices traded along the Silk Road. Now, let's talk about the Silk Road, because you can't discuss Tang Dynasty China without it. This was the ancient world's equivalent of the Internet, a sprawling network of trade routes connecting China to the Mediterranean. We're talking about moving goods across 4,000 miles with everything from silk and spices to, believe it or not, rhino horn. Fun fact, a pound of silk was worth its weight in gold, literally. This road wasn't just for goods, though. It was the highway for ideas, religions, and cultures. It's like a historical smoothie, blending everything from Buddhism to Nestorian Christianity into the mix. Li Bai's family was part of this dynamic cultural exchange. His father was in the business of commerce, which, let's face it, was a smart move in a time when trade was the ticket to upward mobility. The economic boom of the Tang dynasty meant that if you played your cards right, you could climb the social ladder faster than you can say Confucius. But Li Bai wasn't interested in stacking coins or balancing ledgers. No, his interests lay in the stars, literally, as he had a fascination with Taoism and the cosmos, which would later translate into his poetry. Growing up in this eclectic environment, Li Bai was exposed to a gamut of influences. His education was top-notch, courtesy of his father's ample resources, which allowed him to study the Chinese classics, history, and poetry. Here's where the legend starts to twist the facts. Some say he was a celestial being sent to Earth, but I suspect that's just a poetic way of saying the guy was unbelievably talented. Sure, he wrote with a celestial flair, but he also had a human penchant for wine and whimsy. The Tang dynasty was a time when poets were rock stars, and Li Bai was poised to be its Mick Jagger. The socio-economic conditions of the time were ripe for someone like him to thrive. The government was relatively stable, allowing the arts to flourish. The capital, Chang'an, was the largest city in the world, with over 1 million residents, a bustling metropolis where ideas and art were currency. Li Bai, with his diverse background, was perfectly positioned to take this cultural cocktail and turn it into poetry. Li Bai's early years were filled with travel, a common thread among many poets and scholars of his time. Wanderlust wasn't just a personal quirk, it was a professional necessity. The more places you visited, the more grist for the poetic mill. And in a world where the average farmer never strayed more than a few miles from his birthplace, Li Bai was gallivanting across China like it was his personal playground. The Tang dynasty's liberal policies encouraged this kind of intellectual freedom. Education wasn't just for the elite, it was accessible to a wider audience, thanks to the civil service exams that allowed commoners to rise to positions of power based on merit rather than birthright. In such an environment, Li Bai's multicultural background was less a hindrance and more a hidden ace. He was like a cultural chameleon, able to draw from a well of diverse experiences that enriched his work. While Li Bai's poetry soared to ethereal heights, his feet were planted firmly in the muck and mire of the earthly realm. He was known for his love of wine, which he consumed with a dedication that would rival any modern-day sommelier. Legend has it that he composed some of his best work while 3 sheets to the wind, a testament to both his genius and his tolerance. But let's not romanticize this too much. Wine wasn't just a poetic muse. It was also a social lubricant in a society where guanxi, or personal connections, were vital. In the grand tapestry of Tang Dynasty China, Li Bai was both a product and a producer. He absorbed the influences of a multicultural society, then distilled them into verses that transcended his era. His life was a blend of myth and reality, much like the world he inhabited. While tales of his celestial origins are charming, they detract from the real magic. A man who, through wit and word, left a mark on history as indelible as ink on rice paper. Li Bai's life was an odyssey, a roadmap etched in ink and wine stains across the vast canvas of Tang Dynasty China. He was a man perpetually in motion, covering thousands of miles without the convenience of a high-speed train or a comfy airline seat. Nope, Li Bai did it the old-fashioned way, on foot, horseback, or the occasional boat ride down the Yangtze, which was as much a hub of travel as it was a source of poetic inspiration. You see, back in the day, travel wasn't just a matter of packing a bag and hopping on the next ride. It was an expedition fraught with peril and the occasional bout of dysentery. Yet Li Bai embraced it with the zeal of a man who knew that each new destination could be the birthplace of his next great stanza. His wanderlust took him from the bustling imperial court of Chang'an to the serene landscapes of what are now Sichuan and Hubei provinces. Chang'an, the Tang dynasty's capital, was the medieval equivalent of Times Square, dazzling, crowded, and full of movers and shakers. But the thing about Li Bai was that he wasn't just meeting these historical bigwigs, he was charming the silk socks off them. Whether it was a fellow poet like Defoe or a high-ranking official, he had a knack for turning every encounter into a networking opportunity, often sealed with a clink of wine cups. However, let's not pretend it was all poetry slams and parties. The economic realities of being a travelling poet were as sobering as an unwatered wine goblet. Li Bai wasn't exactly rolling in dough, and his lifestyle was more about couch surfing and patronage than it was about luxury inns and room service. Patronage, mind you, was the social currency of the time. It was how artists survived. Having a wealthy patron was like owning a golden ticket, except your Charlie factory was a chance to write verses without worrying about your next meal. But Li Bai's travels weren't just about collecting friends and favours. They were political tightropes, with a poet's quill as both a passport and a potential poison chalice. The Tang dynasty had its fair share of political intrigue, and navigating it was a delicate dance. Li Bai's poems often walked a fine line between flattery and critique, a testament to his cunning as much as his creativity. In a court where one misstep could land you in a very cold, very small cell, or worse, Li Bai managed to charm, offend, and entertain, sometimes all in the same verse. One can't talk about Li Bai without mentioning his time with the infamous Prince of Ning, a political figure with ambitions as high as Li Bai's metaphors. The prince, known for his rebellious streak, found a kindred spirit in Li Bai's free-spirited nature and lyrical genius. However, this friendship was a double-edged sword. While it offered Li Bai the patronage he needed, it also tethered him to the prince's less-than-stable political fortunes, a precarious position when alliances shifted like desert sands. Li Bai's poetry was his shield and his sword. His verses could get him into rooms that were otherwise locked to a man of his transient means. Yet they were also scrutinized for hints of subversion as keenly as a palace intrigue. His daring verses, laced with critique and satire, were a reminder that even in an era of relative artistic freedom, the pen was only mightier than the sword if wielded with care. Despite the romantic image of the poet as a wanderer, let's not forget the harshness of the road. The Tang dynasty may have been a golden era, but gold doesn't fill an empty stomach or warm you on a cold night in the mountains. Li Bai's travels were filled with both scenic beauty and stark realities, the kind that sharpened his worldview and enriched his poetry. Each journey was a blend of discovery and survival, a mix that shaped his legacy as much as it fed his legend. As we trace Li Bai's steps across the vast expanse of China, it becomes clear that his life was a sequence of leaps, both literal and metaphorical. He leapt from town to town, court to court, and in so doing leapt into history. His wanderlust was not just a personal quirk or a poetic trope. It was a necessity in a world where staying still often meant stagnation. His life was a testament to the idea that sometimes moving is the only way to keep from getting swept away by the currents of time. So, while we imagine Li Bai with his ink brush and wine cup, remember that he was as much a traveller as he was a poet. His life was a tapestry of journeys, each thread a story, each destination a stanza. His legacy, much like his life, is a blend of myth and reality, a mosaic of moments that together paint the portrait of a man who was both a product of his time and a timeless figure. Stay tuned, because this journey is far from over. Now, let's pivot to the lavish and labyrinthine world of the Tang imperial court, where Li Bai found himself in 742 AD. If Chang'an was the medieval Times Square, then the court of Emperor Xuanzong was its glittering Broadway, an opulent stage where whispers of power danced with the rustle of silk robes. Li Bai's entrance into this world was nothing short of a spectacle, much like a rock star crashing a royal gala. So, how did our wandering wordsmith end up rubbing elbows with the emperor's entourage? It wasn't just luck or a penchant for fine wine, although both played their parts. Li Bai's reputation had snowballed into a legend that preceded him, and his verses were hotter than a summer in Chang'an. Emperor Xuanzong, a patron of the arts himself, was drawn to Li Bai's celestial talent like a moth to a poetic flame. Now, the Tang court wasn't just any workplace, it was the corporate ladder of the 8th century adorned with jade and gold. But let's not romanticize it too much. Behind the silk screens and elaborate banquets lay a thicket of political intrigue that made Game of Thrones look like child's play. In this world, poetry wasn't just a pastime, It was a political tool, and Li Bai had just been handed a quill as sharp as a dagger. Li Bai's appointment as a Hanlon scholar, a sort of imperial poet laureate, was an acknowledgment of his prowess. The position was prestigious, but it came with strings attached, like a beautifully gilded cage. You see, the court was a place where every compliment was a calculated move, every jest a potential misstep. And Li Bai, with his penchant for speaking his mind, was like a bull in a china shop, or rather a poet in a court full of politicians. The parties at the Tongue Court were legendary, with enough extravagance to make even the most lavish modern galas look like a backyard barbecue. Picture this. Endless feasts where the wine flowed like the Yellow River and the air was dense with the scent of incense and political tension. The emperor himself was a fan of these gatherings, and Li Bai was a star attraction. His poetry was the entertainment, his verses as intoxicating as the wine being poured. But let's not get carried away. There's a reason they say you shouldn't mix business with pleasure. Li Bai was known for his love of wine, and while it fueled his creativity, it also led to some legendary faux pas. Imagine showing up to a meeting with the CEO slightly tipsy. It's a modern HR nightmare. For Li Bai, it was a reality at the court, where tales of him composing impromptu verses while inebriated were both beloved and, well, a bit concerning. One such incident involved a particularly spirited evening where Li Bai, after several cups of wine, was asked to compose a poem for the emperor. The result? A verse so brilliant it dazzled everyone present, but also so audacious it made the courtiers shift nervously in their seats. It was a poetic tightrope walk that only Li Bai could pull off until he couldn't. You see, in the Tongue Court, words were as volatile as gunpowder, and one wrong step could light the fuse. Li Bai's free-spirited nature was both his charm and his Achilles' heel. His poetry, often laced with satire and critique, was a double-edged sword. In a court where every word was weighed and measured, Li Bai's verses were sometimes too heavy for the delicate scales of political propriety. This brings us to the awkward culmination of Li Bai's stint at the court. His dismissal wasn't a dramatic fall from grace, but rather a quiet exit stage left, like a curtain falling after a particularly raucous play. The official reason? Well, let's just say that turning up with a wine-stained robe and a cheeky grin didn't win him any points in the eyes of sober bureaucrats. Li Bai's departure from the court was a gentle reminder that while talent could open doors, it also required a bit of tact to keep them ajar. The Tongue Court was a place where alliances were as fragile as porcelain, and Li Bai, despite, or perhaps because of his brilliance, found himself on the outside looking in. But let's not mourn his departure too much. Li Bai was never meant to be caged by courtly constraints. His spirit was too expansive, his verses too wild. Leaving the court was perhaps the best thing that could have happened to him. It allowed him to return to the open road, to the landscapes that inspired him, and to the life of a wanderer, which was the true canvas for his art. So there it is, the tale of Li Bai's courtly escapade, a brief but brilliant chapter in a life that was anything but ordinary. As we close this chapter, remember that Li Bai's brilliance lay not just in his ability to string words into lyrical masterpieces, but also in his refusal to be anything but himself. His time at the Tongue Court is a testament to the idea that while the world may try to tame you, true genius knows no bounds. And with that, we leave Li Bai as he steps back onto the road, his journey far from over, his quill as sharp as ever. Stay tuned, because the next chapter in Li Bai's life is waiting just around the bend. As Li Bai stepped back onto the road, leaving behind the glittering but treacherous world of the Tongue Court, he was heading into a storm far more chaotic than any courtly intrigue. Picture this. The year is 755 AD, and the Tang dynasty, once as stable as a Confucian proverb, is about to be rocked by the Unlushan rebellion. Li Bai's timing, as always, was impeccably dramatic. Now, if you thought the Tang court was a political minefield, the rebellion was a full-blown earthquake. Unlushan, a general with ambitions bigger than his army, decided it was time to shake things up. He declared himself emperor and launched a rebellion that would last nearly 8 years, causing a seismic shift in the social and political landscape. It was the ancient equivalent of a hostile corporate takeover, except with more swords and fewer board meetings. Li Bai found himself caught up in this whirlwind, and it wasn't just a matter of picking sides. The rebellion created a tapestry of shifting alliances, where yesterday's friend could be tomorrow's foe. For a poet whose quill had always been his sword, these were dangerous times. His association with Prince of Ning, remember him, had already put Li Bai on the political fringe. Now, that fringe was fraying fast. As the rebellion raged, Li Bai's poetic soul was both a blessing and a curse. His verses, once a source of imperial favour, now became a liability. In a world where words were as potent as arrows, Li Bai's penchant for free expression was risky business. Imagine composing a poem critiquing the government while the government is busy defending itself against a rebellion. Not the best career move, right? Yet, in true Li Bai fashion, he couldn't resist. His poetry during these tumultuous years reflected the chaos of the era. If his earlier works were celestial dances, these were more like fiery protests. He wrote of the suffering caused by the rebellion, the displacement of people, and the fragility of human life. His words were a mirror to the turmoil, raw and unfiltered. But let's not romanticize this too much. In a time of war, poetry was as much a target as it was an art. Li Bai's involvement in the rebellion wasn't just poetic, it was personal. He briefly joined the court of Prince Lin, a figure who opposed An Lushan. But aligning with a prince during a rebellion was like betting on a horse in a race where the track keeps changing direction. When Lin's fortunes faltered, so did Li Bai's prospects. The rebellion was a game of high stakes, and Li Bai found himself on the losing side. His capture and imprisonment were almost inevitable. In 758 AD, Li Bai was arrested under charges of treason, a fate as ironic as it was tragic for a man who had spent his life chasing beauty and truth. His imprisonment was a stark reminder that in times of upheaval, even the most eloquent verses can't shield you from the blade of political retribution. The charges were heavy, but the irony was heavier still. Li Bai, the poetic free spirit, was now a prisoner of the very world he had tried to transcend. But here's the twist. Li Bai's poetry didn't falter behind bars. If anything, it flourished. His confinement became a crucible for his art, a place where his thoughts simmered into verses of profound depth. His poems from this period are imbued with a sense of introspection, of questioning one's place in the universe. The walls that enclosed him also amplify his voice, turning his personal struggle into a universal lament. It's as if his quill, once a tool of leisure, became a lifeline. The economic backdrop of this period was as grim as Li Bai's prison cell. The rebellion wreaked havoc on the Tang economy, which had once boasted a treasury as rich as its silk. The cost of war drained resources, and the Silk Road, the artery of trade, was clogged with uncertainty. Inflation soared, and the price of daily goods was as unpredictable as the political climate. It was a time when a loaf of bread could cost you the same as a banquet a few years prior. In this economic maelstrom, poetry seemed a luxury, yet it was a necessity, a beacon of humanity amidst chaos. Li Bai's release from prison was a stroke of luck, or perhaps a nod from the celestial forces he often mused about. The intervention of influential friends and a general amnesty for those involved in the rebellion saw him walk free. But freedom was a bittersweet gift. The world he re-entered was fractured, much like the poet himself. The Tang dynasty, though not defeated, was a shadow of its former self, and Li Bai, once a celebrated figure, was now an emblem of resilience against the tides of fate. Yet, even as the world shifted beneath his feet, Li Bai remained a testament to the enduring power of art. His later years, though quieter, were no less profound. He continued to write, capturing the essence of a world in recovery. His poetry became a chronicle of both personal and collective healing, a reminder that even in the aftermath of chaos, beauty could still be found. As we leave Li Bai on the cusp of his final journey, remember this. His life was a tapestry woven with threads of myth and reality, a testament to the human spirit's capacity for both creation and survival. His story doesn't conclude here. It merely pauses, awaiting the next chapter in the annals of history. Li Bai, the eternal wanderer, had danced with emperors and dined with rebels, proving that even in a world of upheaval, the pen remains mightier than the sword if wielded with both courage and caution. Stay tuned, because the tale of Li Bai is far from over, and the next act promises both revelation and reflection. So, as we leave Li Bai teetering on the brink of his final journey, let's dive into the swirling mists of myth and reality that envelop his legacy. You know, History loves a good tall tale, and Li Bai's life is no exception. One of the most persistent legends concerns his death, said to have occurred in 762, supposedly while attempting to embrace the moon's reflection in the Yangtze River. It's the kind of poetic irony that would make any bard proud, but let's not get carried away. Before you start envisioning Li Bai as some ancient Chinese precursor to a Hollywood stuntman, remember, there's no hard evidence to support this moon-chasing escapade. In reality, Li Bai's end was likely less dramatic, and more in line with the ailments of age, possibly aggravated by a lifetime of wine and wandering. But the moon story persists, and why not? It captures the essence of a man who spent his life reaching for the celestial, both in verse and in spirit. The tale is as intoxicating as the wine he loved, a fitting tribute to a poet whose life was as much about myth as it was about meter. Now, let's talk legacy. Li Bai's poetry is preserved in a staggering anthology of over 1,000 surviving works. For a guy who lived more than 1,200 years ago, that's an impressive literary footprint. His verses have been translated into countless languages, offering a global audience the chance to savor his musings on nature, friendship, and existential whimsy. His work has influenced poets from Japan to England, becoming a staple in the canon of world literature. But why does Li Bai's poetry endure? Why does he continue to captivate readers to this day? The answer lies in his ability to blend the universal with the personal, the celestial with the mundane. His poetry is a study in contrasts, capturing both the grandeur of mountains and the intimacy of a shared drink. Take his famous line, "The birds have vanished down the sky, and now the last cloud drains away," which evokes a sense of fleeting beauty, a reminder that even the grandest scenes are transient. It's this duality that gives his work a timeless quality, resonating with anyone who's ever paused to ponder the impermanence of life. Yet, beneath the romance, there's the reality of Li Bai's struggles. He was a man of contradictions, a Taoist who loved the physical pleasures of life, a poet who sought freedom in a world that often demanded conformity. His life was marked by moments of profound joy and deep despair, a roller coaster ride through the Tang dynasty's golden age. He experienced the heights of imperial favor and the lows of political exile. These experiences, as much as his poetic talent, shaped his legacy. As for the economic context, the Tang dynasty, despite its splendor, wasn't all peaches and cream. The era's prosperity masked underlying tensions, political, social, and economic, that would eventually unravel into chaos. Li Bai lived through these upheavals, his verses both a reflection and a critique of his times. His poetry often lamented the ephemerality of wealth and power, a theme that resonated with a populace experiencing the whiplash of economic instability. And then there's the cultural impact. Li Bai's work has been a cornerstone of Chinese education for centuries, his poems memorized by students and celebrated by scholars. His influence extends beyond literature into art, music, and philosophy, his verses inspiring countless adaptations. In the realm of Chinese calligraphy, his poetry has been a favored subject, the brushstrokes capturing the fluidity and grace of his words. Even in modern times, his legacy endures, his life a reminder of the enduring power of art to transcend the boundaries of time and space. Yet, for all his influence, Li Bai remains an enigma, a man both of his era and beyond it. His life is a testament to the complexity of human nature, a blend of brilliance and folly, ambition and humility. He was a product of his time, yet his work speaks to the timeless struggles of the human condition. In this way, Li Bai's legacy is both a reflection of the past and a beacon for the future, a reminder that art, in its purest form, transcends the confines of history. As we wrap up this tale of Li Bai, let's reflect on the enduring appeal of his legend. It's tempting to view him through the romantic lens of myth, to see him as the celestial poet forever chasing the moon. But to do so is to overlook the man behind the myth, a man whose struggles and triumphs, flaws and virtues make his story not just a legend, but a reflection of our own human journey. It's this humanity that makes Li Bai's poetry timeless, his verses a bridge between the ephemeral and the eternal. So, as you drift off to sleep with these musings in mind, remember Li Bai not just as a figure from the annals of history, but as a fellow traveller on the road of life. His legacy is a testament to the power of words to capture the essence of existence, a reminder that even in a world of chaos and change, the beauty of art endures. And as we close the book on Levi, let's carry forward his spirit of wonder and exploration, his love for the celestial dance of words and dreams. You wake up to the sound of birds chirping, and the crisp air of a Welsh morning fills your lungs. No snooze button on this sunrise, just the call of duty as a Celtic bard in 3rd century Wales. Now, don't let the romanticised idea of wandering minstrels fool you into thinking this is a life of leisure. Your role is crucial, almost like being a human search engine, but with considerably more poetry and fewer pop-up ads. As your eyes open to the soft glow of the fading stars, you realize that your mind must be sharper than the edge of a Roman sword. Bards like you are the keepers of history, the ones who preserve the stories of your people in a time when written texts are as rare as a dragon sighting. You hold the lineage of your community's heroes, myths and laws, not on scrolls, but in your memory. That's right, no books to leaf through, it's all stored in the good old noggin. Your job is to recount these tales with flair. Accuracy is key, but so is a bit of drama. After all, who doesn't like a saga with a good twist? Your morning routine isn't complete without a mental run-through of the oral epics you'll perform later. Perhaps there's a gathering at a local chieftain's hall, where you'll recount tales of legendary battles or sing praises of the gods. A bard's voice is his instrument, so a little warm-up with some vocal exercises might not go amiss. Maybe toss in a few tongue twisters to get those words rolling off your tongue like honey from a comb. Now, let's talk about oral tradition, the bread and butter of your bardic life. In a world without the luxury of printed books, stories are the lifeline of culture and history. They're passed down like precious heirlooms, each bard adding their own flair while staying true to the essence. Your job is to keep these tales alive, ensuring that every hero's deed, every king's folly, and every star-crossed romance lives on in the collective memory of your people. Think of it as the original version of keeping it real. But don't be fooled into thinking this is some idyllic, artsy existence. The stakes are high. If you botch a tale, you're not just offending the audience, you're potentially rewriting the past. Get it right, and you're a star. Get it wrong, and you might just find yourself at the business end of a spear. No pressure, right? The role of bards in society is akin to that of a news broadcaster, historian, and entertainer, all rolled into one. You're the one who ensures that the tales of great warriors and ancestors don't fade into oblivion. In societies like yours, where literacy is about as common as a solar eclipse, bards are indispensable. You're the bridge between the past and the present, a living archive of the successes and failures of your people. As you prepare for your day, you can't help but chuckle at the idea of anyone in the future calling this the Dark Ages. If only they knew the vibrant tapestry of oral history that fills these times. Your stories are the light in the so-called darkness, illuminating the values, beliefs, and struggles of your culture. You're not just recounting tales, you're shaping the identity of your community. Your day as a Celtic bard is a testament to the power of storytelling, a skill that's been honed over generations. As you step out into the misty morning, you're reminded that while the tools of communication may have evolved over the centuries, the heart of the bard's mission remains unchanged, to inform, to inspire, and to entertain. And with that, you're off to don your metaphorical cape and dive headfirst into sharing the history of your people, one epic saga at a time. And as you stroll toward the communal hearth, leaving the misty morning behind, let's dive into the nitty-gritty of what it means to make a living as a 3rd century Celtic bard. Spoiler alert, it's not all sunshine and free mead. In fact, the economic reality is more complex than one of those Celtic knot designs you're so fond of. First off, let's talk instruments. The harp, a bard's trusty sidekick, wasn't exactly falling off the back of a cart. Crafting a harp required materials like willow wood and gut strings, which didn't come cheap. You might shell out what would be the equivalent of a few cows to get your hands on one. Cows, you ask? Yes, because in this world, livestock is more than just future stake, it's currency. So, owning a harp was like rolling around with the latest tech gadget. Impressive, costly, and the envy of every other bard on the block. But a harp isn't your only ticket to bardic stardom. While a well-crafted instrument can elevate your performance, the real gold is in the tales you spin and the songs you sing. You're not just playing music, you're weaving stories that resonate with your audience, And let's be honest, a killer tale about a hero slaying a dragon or a king's epic blunder is worth its weight in gold, or at least a couple of sheep. Now, let's take a closer look at the professional side of being a bard. Forget the romantic notion of the wandering minstrel, aimlessly strumming and singing for a crust of bread. In reality, most bards had steady gigs with noble patrons. These were the folks who appreciated your talent enough to keep you around, giving you a comfy spot by the fire instead of a cold ditch by the roadside. Think of it as having a residency, minus the neon lights and flashing billboards of modern-day Vegas. Why did patrons invest in bards, you ask? Well, having a bard was like owning a medieval PR machine. Your songs could immortalize a chieftain's deeds, gloss over his failures, and make sure his name echoed through the hills long after he'd shuffled off this mortal coil. Plus, a bard's presence was a status symbol, much like owning a sports car today. It told everyone, I've made it, and look who's singing my praises. But what if you weren't lucky enough to land a cushy gig with a noble? Enter the economy of favours and gifts. Bards often navigated a world where barter was king. Forget your modern-day salary, you'd be paid in goods and services. A hearty meal here, a warm cloak there, maybe even a pair of new shoes if your story really hit the mark. It wasn't just about talent. It was about building relationships, understanding the social currents, and knowing when to cash in a favour. Remember, though, that even the best bard could have a tough crowd. If your tale didn't quite hit the right note, you might find your audience less than generous. And in a world where reputation was everything, one bad performance could mean the difference between a warm bed and a chilly night outdoors. So, the stakes were high, and the pressure was real. As you near the communal hearth, consider the fire not just a source of warmth, but a symbol of the bardic life. It's where stories are shared, economies are navigated, and legends are born. Each flame flickers like a tale waiting to be told, bright and full of energy, yet needing the right conditions to truly blaze. This is the heart of your craft, the reason you wake up to those cold Welsh mornings ready to sing, to share, and to keep the light of your culture burning brightly. And as you prepare to take your place by the fire, remember that your role is more than mere entertainment. It's a sacred duty to preserve the past and illuminate the future. As the fire crackles and pops, you find yourself at the heart of the action, literally. Today, your midday mission involves a bit more than just spinning yarns. It's about spinning narratives that could tip the scales of power. Welcome to the political arena of 3rd century Wales, where bards like you aren't just entertainers, but the original spin doctors. Forget the notion of impartiality. Your tales carry weight, shaping public opinion and diplomacy in ways that'd make modern media moguls green with envy. Picture this. A chieftain's hall bustling with activity, the air thick with the smell of roasting meat and the low hum of hushed conversations. These gatherings are your stage, and your audience, a mix of warriors, advisors, and the chieftain himself, all eager to hear tales that will reinforce their status, bolster their morale, or perhaps even justify a brewing conflict. In this world, words are weapons as sharp as any sword, and you're the master blacksmith crafting them. Let's get one thing straight. Politics in this era isn't about structured debates or formal elections. It's more raw, more visceral. It's about who can rally the most warriors, who can claim the gods' favour, and who can outmaneuver rivals with a well-placed rumour or an inspiring tale. Enter the bard, wielding stories like a scalpel to carve out public perception. Your narratives can paint a neighbouring tribe as a noble ally or a treacherous foe, depending on what the political winds demand. You're not just telling stories, you're crafting reality. Now, don't think for a second that this power comes without its challenges. Every tale you spin is a tightrope walk. Too much flattery, and your audience might smell the desperation. Too little, and you might just find yourself out of favour and out of a job. It's a balancing act, really, one that requires not just skill, but a keen understanding of the political landscape. You're like a human barometer, sensing shifts in tribal loyalties and adjusting your stories to match. And while it might sound glamorous, let's not overlook the harsh realities. One wrong word, one misplaced metaphor, and you could find yourself on the wrong side of a power struggle. In a world where allegiances are as changeable as the Welsh weather, you have to be as nimble with your words as you are with your feet. After all, you might need to make a quick exit if the narrative you're spinning starts to unravel. Your role in tribal politics isn't just about influencing the here and now, it's about securing a legacy. For the chieftains and kings who employ you, your stories are the equivalent of an ancient PR campaign. They ensure that their deeds, both heroic and otherwise, are remembered long after their bones have turned to dust. And in a society built on oral tradition, where the written word is a luxury reserved for the rare few, your voice is the primary medium through which history is recorded. Consider this. The chieftain you're currently serenading might be looking to expand his territory. Your job? Craft a tale that justifies such ambitions, perhaps by highlighting past grievances or by painting the neighbouring tribe as a threat to peace and prosperity. It's not just storytelling, it's strategy. You're the unseen hand guiding the course of events, the whisperer who can sway decisions with a well-timed tale. But let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Why does any of this matter? Well, in a world without newspapers, TV or social media, bards are the closest thing to a trusted news source. You're the one who ensures that the narrative is controlled, that the right message reaches the right ears. And while today's media landscape might have a few more bells and whistles, the essence remains unchanged. Control the story, control the power. And let's not forget the economic angle. Your ability to influence tribal politics directly impacts your own fortunes. Align yourself with the right chieftain, and you're set for a life of comfort, with plenty of food, shelter, and perhaps even a share of the spoils from a victorious campaign. But choose poorly, and you might find yourself out in the cold, quite literally, as loyalties shift and new leaders rise. So, as you stand there in the hall with all eyes on you, remember that your words have the power to shape destinies. You're more than just a bard, you're a kingmaker, a diplomat, and a historian, all rolled into one. And as the midday sun casts long shadows across the room, you know that the stories you tell today will echo through the hills and valleys of Wales for generations to come. The stakes are high, the pressure is on, but if there's one thing you've learned, it's that the right tale, told at the right time, can change the course of history. And as you finish spinning your latest political yarn, you might notice the subtle nods of approval from the chieftain's advisors. You've hit the sweet spot between flattery and fact, earning points in the complex game of tribal politics. But as the afternoon sun dips lower, casting a warm glow on the faces around you, it's time to turn our attention to the intricate social web that bards like you must navigate. Let's clear up one major misconception. The life of a bard isn't all poetic musings and carefree wanderings. You're not a medieval rock star frolicking through the hills with a harp in one hand and a mug of ale in the other. Oh no, being a bard is akin to walking a tightrope between admiration and envy, respect and fear. You're the ultimate insider-outsider, floating between social classes with the ease of a sparrow riding the wind, yet always keenly aware of the ground below. Your status as a bard grants you a unique position in society. You're respected for your knowledge and feared for your sharp tongue. In a world where a misplaced word can lead to a blood feud, your ability to craft and deliver stories with precision is both a blessing and a curse. You're the gatekeeper of reputation, able to elevate a warrior's status or reduce a chieftain to ridicule with a few well-chosen words. It's a power that demands respect and maybe just a touch of wariness from everyone around you. But let's not romanticize this too much. With great power comes great responsibility and plenty of pressure. Think of it like being the original influencer, but instead of Instagram likes, you're dealing in the currency of honor and legacy. One slip of the tongue, one tale told in the wrong company, and you could find yourself on the business end of a spear. Such is the life of a cultural linchpin in 3rd century Wales. Now, let's talk about the social dynamics at play. As a bard, you're a bit of a social chameleon. You can mingle with the highest of the high and the lowest of the low, moving seamlessly between the worlds of warriors, chieftains, and common folk. It's a delicate dance, requiring a keen understanding of the nuances of each social class. Your interactions with warriors are often marked by camaraderie and mutual respect. After all, these are the folks whose deeds you're immortalizing in song and story. But it's not all backslapping and tankard clinking. You're also a keen observer of human nature, noting the bravado that hides insecurity, the ambition that fuels rivalry. It's your job to capture these complexities in your tales, creating heroes out of humans and myths out of mere mortals. When it comes to chieftains and nobles, your role is more delicate. You're both an entertainer and an advisor, a source of both amusement and insight. They rely on your stories to bolster their status and legitimize their rule, but they also know that your words carry weight. A tale of their latest victory can cement their power, while a clever quip about their foibles can sow the seeds of dissent. It's a fine line to walk, but that's the life of a bard. A constant negotiation between flattery and truth, praise and prudence. And then there are the common folk, the farmers and craftspeople who form the backbone of society. To them, you're a source of both entertainment and education. Your tales bring the larger world into their hearths, connecting them to the broader tapestry of history and myth. But it's not a one-way street. You learn from them too, gathering stories and insights that enrich your own repertoire. It's a symbiotic relationship, one that keeps you grounded and connected to the land and its people. Now, let's bust another myth, the idea of the carefree bard, wandering the countryside without a care in the world. The truth is far more complex. Yes, you travel widely, but it's not all scenic vistas and warm welcomes. You're constantly adapting to new environments, new audiences, each with its own expectations and challenges. You're a perpetual outsider, always on the move, never truly belonging. It's a life that demands resilience, adaptability, and a touch of wanderlust. Yet, despite the challenges, there's a certain freedom in this way of life. You're not tied to one place, one community. Your stories transcend borders, connecting people and places in a way that few others can. You're a bridge between worlds, a conduit for culture and history, a living embodiment of the oral tradition. And let's not forget the economic realities of your role. While your songs and stories are your primary currency, there's also a more tangible aspect to your trade. You're often compensated in goods and services, a warm meal here, a new cloak there. It's a barter economy, one that requires you to be not only a skilled storyteller, but also a savvy negotiator. After all, you've got to eat, and those harps don't buy themselves. As the afternoon wears on, you find yourself reflecting on the balance between entertainment and education, a balance that lies at the heart of your craft. You're not just spinning tales for amusement. You're preserving history, shaping culture, and influencing the future. It's a role that comes with its own set of pressures and responsibilities, but it's also one that offers unparalleled rewards. So, as the sun begins to set, casting long shadows over the Welsh landscape, you prepare for your next performance. It's a new audience, a new challenge, but one thing remains constant, the power of a well-told story. You take a deep breath, feeling the familiar thrill of anticipation, the quiet confidence that comes from knowing your craft. You're a bard, and this is your world. A world of words and wonders, of myths and memories, of legends and legacies. And as you step into the circle of light cast by the evening fire, you're ready to do what you do best, capture the hearts and minds of all who listen. As you step into the circle of light cast by the evening fire, you're ready to do what you do best, capture the hearts and minds of all who listen. The audience gathers, eagerly awaiting the tales that will whisk them away from the grind of daily life into a world where gods walk among mortals and heroes are forged in the crucible of battle. But let's not get carried away with visions of cheering crowds and standing ovations. Being a bard in 3rd century Wales is more like performing a high-wire act without a safety net. One misstep, and you're not just losing an audience, you're losing a reputation built on the precarious balance of truth and embellishment. The stakes are as high as the towering oaks that dot the Welsh landscape. This isn't just about entertaining, it's about leaving a mark, one tale at a time. The evening performance is your moment to shine, to transform the flickering firelight into a stage where history, myth and reality blend into an intoxicating brew. Bards like you aren't just the storytellers, you're the cultural custodians, the keepers of a past that lives only in memory, not on paper. Now, let's set the scene. The fire crackles, casting dancing shadows on faces etched with the lines of hard-won wisdom and youthful expectation alike. This is your canvas, a living tapestry upon which you will paint with words. Tonight's tale might be about Kuo Shulanen, the hero whose exploits are as legendary as they are cautionary. Or perhaps you'll recount the saga of a local chieftain whose cunning and courage saved his people from certain doom. Whatever the story, it's your job to breathe life into it, to make the past as vivid as the present moment. Here's the thing about being a bard. You're both a performer and a historian. Your tales are the social glue that binds the community together, offering moral lessons wrapped in the guise of entertainment. But don't mistake this for a simple task. In a time when written records are as rare as a quiet day in the Roman Senate, the accuracy of your tales is vital. Get it wrong, and you're not just failing your audience, you're failing history itself. It's a heavy crown to wear, but one that comes with its own peculiar kind of glory. And speaking of glory, let's talk about the legacy of these performances. Bards were the original rock stars, commanding attention and adoration in equal measure. Your stories shape cultural memory, influencing how future generations perceive their past. It's a bit like being a time traveler, except you're armed with a harp and a head full of stories instead of a flux capacitor. The tales you tell tonight will echo through the ages, not just preserving history but actively shaping it. But let's not sugarcoat this. The romanticized image of the bard as a carefree wanderer, enchanting audiences with a flick of the wrist and a twinkle in the eye, is about as accurate as a medieval map of the world. Sure, there's a certain allure to the bardic lifestyle, the freedom of the open road, the thrill of the performance, but it comes with its share of gritty realities. For every night spent basking in applause, there are a dozen more spent honing your craft, navigating political minefields, and, let's be honest, trying to stay warm and well-fed. Now, why does this matter today? Because the image of the bard has persisted through time, transcending its historical roots to become a symbol of artistic freedom and cultural resilience. In a world where the written word dominates, the bard represents a connection to our storytelling origins, reminding us that at the heart of every great civilization is the power of a well-told story. It's a legacy that continues to inspire, even in a world that's moved on to podcasts and live-streamed concerts. As you wrap up your performance, the firelight flickering in your eyes and the satisfied murmur of the audience ringing in your ears, you realize that you've done more than entertain. You've upheld a tradition that dates back centuries. You've added your voice to the chorus of history, ensuring that the stories of gods and men, of triumphs and tragedies, continue to resonate in the collective memory of your people. And just like that, the evening draws to a close. The fire burns low, casting long shadows on the ground as the audience begins to disperse. The tales you've told tonight will linger in their minds, sparking conversations and debates that will carry on long after the embers have cooled. You've reminded them of their heritage, of the strength and courage that define their culture. And in doing so, you fulfilled your role, not just as a bard, but as a guardian of history, a weaver of dreams, and a keeper of the flame. So, as you pack up your harp and prepare to journey on, consider this. While the tools of storytelling may have evolved, the heart of the bard's mission remains unchanged. Whether in a chieftain's hall or a cozy living room, the power of a story well told is timeless. It's the legacy of the bards, the original rock stars of history, who knew that the greatest stories are not just those that entertain, but those that endure. And as you step into the cool night, ready to face whatever the road may bring, remember that your legacy is more than the stories you've told. It's the lives you've touched, the minds you've opened, and the history you've helped forge. It's a legacy that will echo through time, as enduring as the tales themselves. Here's to the bards, the unsung heroes of history who remind us that in the end, it's not just about the stories we tell, but about the way they change us. The first slivers of dawn sneak through the cracks in your thatched roof, casting a gentle light on the room where you've just awoken. The air is cool, filled with the earthy scent of wet clay from last night's rain, a gift from the ancestors, reminding you once again that today is a day to make your mark. As a Bantu warrior in the first millennium BC, your morning routine is far from leisurely. It's more like a carefully choreographed dance of survival and strategy. You start by reaching for your prized possessions, your weapons. These aren't just tools of warfare, they are extensions of your very being. Your spear, bow, and arrows lie ready, but today the focus is on your iron-tipped spearhead. It's a marvel of engineering, if you do say so yourself, a product of the iron smelting process that's transformed the Bantu way of life. The smelting process itself is no small feat. It's a testament to human ingenuity, requiring temperatures of around 1,538 degrees Celsius to extract iron from ore. It's not just about wielding power, it's about mastering it. As you sharpen the spearhead, you ponder the ripple effects of iron technology. It's not just about the edge it gives in battle, it's about economic muscle too. Iron tools mean more efficient farming, which in turn means more food, and more food means population growth. It's the virtuous cycle that's propelled the Bantu expansion, a migration so vast it makes the Great Migration look like a leisurely Sunday stroll. Over 1,000 years, your ancestors have spread across sub-Saharan Africa, covering a staggering 5,000 kilometers. This isn't just a migration, it's a logistical masterstroke of epic proportions. But let's not get carried away with romantic notions of a peaceful journey. This expansion involved careful planning, resource management, and yes, a fair bit of conflict. You see, not everyone was thrilled about the newcomers with their strange languages and iron weapons. The Bantu expansion was as much about cultural blending and adaptation as it was about conquest. Today, you're a living testament to this complex blend of cultures, languages, and traditions that have come together in a rich tapestry. Now that your spearhead gleams with deadly potential, it's time to consider the economic realities that underpin your warrior status. Iron doesn't just appear out of thin air, and smelting isn't a solo endeavor. It's a community effort involving miners, smelters, and traders, each playing their part. The cost of producing iron, both in terms of materials and labor, is significant. You've heard stories of how some communities had to trade livestock or other valuables just to get their hands on a decent piece of iron. The economic networks that facilitate this trade stretch across regions, connecting distant communities in a web of interdependence. As you prepare to step out into the day, you reflect on the role of language in this grand saga. The Bantu languages, with their rich tonal variations and intricate structures, are more than just means of communication. They are carriers of culture and history, a living record of the journeys, struggles, and triumphs of your people. The linguistic unity among Bantu-speaking peoples has provided a cultural cohesion that's helped sustain the expansion over centuries. It's a reminder that while iron and weaponry may win battles, it's language and culture that win the long game. With your weapons ready and your mind sharp, you step out into the morning light, ready to take on whatever challenges the day might bring. You're aware that as a Bantu warrior, you stand on the shoulders of giants, those who've come before you, paving the way with their innovations, sacrifices, and indomitable spirit. Today, you'll honor their legacy, whether it's through honing your skills, engaging in trade, or simply sharing stories by the fire with your fellow warriors. The day is yours to seize, a canvas waiting for the bold strokes of history you'll paint upon it. Stepping out into the morning light, you're not just a warrior, you're a walking bundle of contradictions and complexity. While the spear at your side gleams with the promise of battle, your mind is already calculating the social chess moves required to navigate the intricate human labyrinth that is Bantu society. Forget the Hollywood trope of the lone grizzled fighter. In your world, being a warrior is as much about diplomacy and leadership as it is about combat. Let's talk about community dynamics. The Bantu social structure is a finely tuned machine where warriors like yourself play multifaceted roles. You're not just muscle, you're a mediator, a negotiator, and sometimes a community therapist. When disputes arise, it's your job to ensure they don't escalate into full-blown feuds. You wield your words as skillfully as your weapons, because in a society held together by kinship and alliances, a misplaced word can be as dangerous as a misplaced arrow. And let's not forget the surprising power of cattle. Yes, you heard me, cattle. These four-legged grass munchers are more than just walking hamburgers. They are the currency of power and influence. In Bantu society, cattle are the ultimate status symbol. They're like the vintage sports cars of the ancient world. Whoever controls the cattle controls the community. Cattle herding is an unexpected path to power, and for you, managing a herd is akin to managing a small business. It requires strategic planning, resource management, and occasionally a bit of sweet-talking to keep the peace with neighbouring herders. But here's where we debunk another myth, the notion that Bantu warriors are perpetually locked in combat mode, their lives an endless string of battles and bloodshed. Sure, conflict is part of the job description, but it's not the whole story. You're also a diplomat, a reconciler, and, believe it or not, a bit of a socialite. Ceremonial gatherings and community festivals are where deals are brokered, alliances are formed, and yes, sometimes even rivalries are squashed. These events are less about flexing military might and more about showcasing your wit and charm. Think of them as the ancient version of networking events, only with more dancing and fewer awkward business cards. The social dynamics of your world are complex, and you navigate them with a keen awareness of the economic realities underpinning your status. The cattle economy isn't just about wealth, it's about survival. During lean times, cattle can be traded for grain, iron, or even peace with a rival group. This isn't just about holding on to what you have, it's about leveraging assets to maintain a delicate balance of power. It's a reminder that economic power is often more enduring than military might. As you move through the village, you're acutely aware of the intricate tapestry of traditions and customs that bind your community together. The Bantu social fabric is rich with rituals and stories passed down through generations, each thread a testament to resilience and adaptability. Oral traditions serve as both entertainment and education, weaving together history, morality, and communal values. These stories are more than just tales, they are cultural glue, binding you to your ancestors and providing a roadmap for future generations. With all these responsibilities, you might wonder when you find time to actually be a warrior in the conventional sense. The truth is, the lines between roles are fluid. One moment you could be mediating a village council meeting, and the next you might be called to defend the community against an external threat. This constant shifting of roles keeps life interesting, if not a tad exhausting. As the sun climbs higher in the sky, casting its harsh light on the village, you pause for a moment of reflection. You understand that your role is a balancing act, a dance between tradition and change, peace and conflict. In this world of cattle, councils, and community ties, you're not just a warrior out for glory, you're a custodian of a way of life, a guardian of both the sword and the plough. Your actions today will echo through the ages, shaping the history and legacy of the Bantu people. It's a heavy mantle, but one you wear with pride and purpose. So as you prepare for the midday meal, which is starting to sound like a pretty good idea right about now, you know that your work is far from over. This day, like so many others, is a mosaic of challenges and opportunities, each requiring a different set of skills and a healthy dose of wisdom. And while the romanticized image of the ever-fighting warrior might persist in stories, you know the truth is far more nuanced and infinitely more interesting. Just as you're savoring the thought of that well-deserved midday meal, let's switch gears. It's time to dive into the political quagmire that is Bantu society, where governance looks less like a Game of Thrones power struggle and more like a chaotic yet fascinating case study in decentralized genius. Forget the image of a single, iron-fisted ruler calling the shots. Here, power is spread like a buffet at a wedding, with everyone having a little taste. You see, Bantu societies were a masterclass in decentralized political structures. Think of your village council as the ancient precursor to a modern board meeting, minus the PowerPoint presentations. In this setup, decisions were made collectively, often through consensus, with elders and chiefs playing vital roles. But don't let the title chief fool you into thinking of a despot lounging on a throne. These were leaders who led by influence, not by decree. Their power was as much about persuasion as it was about prestige. And while it may sound idyllic, the reality was more like herding cats than ruling over subjects. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Unlike the rigid political hierarchies that would define later empires, Bantu groups thrived on flexibility. This adaptability was crucial, especially when you consider the sheer geographic scope of their expansion. We're talking about a spread that spans from the rainforests of Central Africa to the savannas of Southern Africa. It's like taking a road trip across multiple ecosystems, each requiring a different survival strategy. And in this sprawling landscape, a one-size-fits-all approach to governance just wouldn't cut it. Instead, each community tailored its leadership structure to its unique environment and needs. In some places, you might find a council of elders steering the ship. In others, a charismatic warrior could rise to prominence, rallying people with promises of prosperity or at least fewer skirmishes with the neighbours. It's a political landscape as diverse and rich as the terrains they inhabited, and it's precisely this flexibility that allowed Bantu societies to thrive. But let's not romanticize it too much. Politics is politics, whether you're in 1st millennium BC, Africa, or 21st century America. Power struggles were as common as rain in the wet season, with alliances forming and dissolving like soap bubbles. Yet, these alliances were the secret sauce in the Bantu recipe for success. They were the social equivalent of a safety net, providing support in times of trouble and multiplying strength during expansion. It's a classic case of strength in numbers, and it worked like a charm. Trade networks played a starring role in this political drama as well. In a world where currency as we know it didn't exist, trade was the lifeblood of economic and political connections. Goods like iron, salt, and even beads were the currencies of choice, exchanged with a zeal that would make Wall Street brokers nod in approval. These networks became the connective tissue of Bantu society, linking distant communities and fostering not just economic, but also cultural and political ties. Picture this. A trader from one community, laden with iron tools, makes the journey to a neighboring village. It sounds straightforward, but each exchange is a micro-drama of negotiation and diplomacy. The trader isn't just swapping goods, they're building alliances, reinforcing social bonds, and sometimes even serving as an informal ambassador of sorts. It's a delicate dance, one that requires as much finesse as wielding a spear in battle. And here's a reality check. The romantic image of the lone warrior swooping in to save the day doesn't quite hold up under scrutiny. Sure, lone warriors make for great stories around the campfire, but in actuality, success was often a team effort. The real heroes were those who could unite people, forging alliances that transcended individual villages or clans. They were the original networkers, weaving a web of connections that bolstered their communities against external threats and internal discord alike. This brings us to the question of what exactly made these decentralized structures so effective. The answer lies in their inherent resilience. In a centralized system, take out the head and the body crumples. But in a decentralized network, like the Bantu political structures, the loss of a leader didn't spell doom. Others could step up, filling the void and ensuring continuity. It's the political equivalent of a hydra from Greek mythology, cut off one head and two more grow in its place. As the afternoon sun casts long shadows over the village, you can't help but marvel at the ingenuity of your ancestors. Their decentralized political system wasn't perfect, far from it, but it was a masterpiece of human adaptation. It allowed for flexibility, encouraged innovation, and created a society that could withstand the ebb and flow of change. By now, you're probably starting to see the bigger picture. The Bantu were not just warriors or farmers. They were architects of a complex social and political tapestry. Their story is one of adaptation, resilience, and the relentless pursuit of betterment, even in the face of daunting challenges. So, as you prepare to tackle the rest of your day, remember this. In the Bantu world, leadership wasn't about lording over others. It was about collaboration, consensus, and sometimes a little bit of cunning. It was about finding strength in diversity and using that strength to carve out a place in a vast, unpredictable world. You're part of a legacy that's both ancient and enduring, a testament to the power of community and the art of diplomacy. And while the romantic image of the lone warrior might persist, you know that the truth is far more nuanced and infinitely more compelling. As you prepare to tackle the rest of your day, remember this. In the Bantu world, leadership wasn't about lording over others. It was about collaboration, consensus, and sometimes a little bit of cunning. It was about finding strength in diversity and using that strength to carve out a place in a vast, unpredictable world. You're part of a legacy that's both ancient and enduring, a testament to the power of community and the art of diplomacy. And while the romantic image of the lone warrior might persist, you know that the truth is far more nuanced and infinitely more compelling. But as the sun begins its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, it's time to shift gears. The day's hustle and bustle gradually give way to the communal heartbeat of the village, music, storytelling, and rituals that transform the mundane into the magical. This is not just downtime, it's the lifeblood of your community, the glue that binds the people together in a shared tapestry of culture and spirituality. Picture this. A circle of villagers gathered around a crackling fire, the air thick with the aroma of roasting meat and the sweet notes of fermented beverages. This isn't just a night out, it's a cultural symposium, Bantu style. Storytellers. Your community's real rock stars take center stage. They weave tales that are as much historical record as they are entertainment, each story a carefully crafted blend of fact and embellishment. In a world without Google or Wikipedia, these oral traditions are the ultimate archive, preserving the collective memory of the people. Take the story of the mythical hero Window, for instance. Window isn't just a character, he's a cultural icon, a symbol of resilience and ingenuity. His tales serve as moral compasses, guiding the community's values and decisions. Sure, Window's feats may be exaggerated. Who really believes he was born speaking and wielding a magical scepter? But that's not the point. The narrative transcends the literal, offering lessons in leadership, bravery, and the importance of community. Now, let's take a hard look at why these myths matter. Beyond their entertainment value, stories like Windows serve a strategic purpose. They're cultural anchors. In a world where written language is not yet the norm, these tales are how you pass down wisdom and reinforce social norms. And let's not forget the political angle. A well-told story is a tool for unity, a way to rally disparate tribes under a shared identity. It's not just about the past, it's about shaping the future, one tale at a time. Speaking of unity, let's talk about music and dance. Forget the notion that these are mere pastimes. In Bantu culture, they're the rhythm of life, a universal language that transcends words. Drums, made from expertly hollowed wood and animal skin, set the tempo. Their beats can be heard for miles, calling the community together like a magnet. Music is more than art, it's a social binder, a means of expressing identity and belonging in a world where unity is strength. And don't underestimate the role of rituals. While modern sensibilities might scoff at the idea of dancing around a fire to appease the spirits, these rituals are profoundly pragmatic. They're community exercises in cohesion and continuity. Take the rain dance, for example. Sure, you might chuckle at the idea of influencing the weather through dance, but consider the psychological effect. It's a communal act of hope and resilience in the face of uncertainty, a ritual that reinforces the belief that together you can weather any storm, literally and metaphorically. But let's not romanticize the past too much. The harsh reality is that these gatherings are also about survival. In a world where external threats are as constant as the rising sun, solidarity is not just an ideal, it's a necessity. These cultural practices are the social threads that ensure your community remains tightly knit, ready to stand together against whatever challenges may come. As the night wears on and the stories grow bolder, the reality is that these narratives are not just about entertainment, they are strategic tools wielded with precision. Elders, the gatekeepers of this oral tradition, carefully curate the tales. They know which stories to tell when, ensuring that lessons of diplomacy, bravery, or caution are delivered precisely when needed. It's ancient storytelling as a form of governance, reinforcing values and keeping the community aligned. And here's a wry observation for you. While the tales of brave warriors and cunning tricksters take center stage, the everyday heroism of the community often goes unsung. The reality is, it's the farmers, the traders, and yes, even the gossiping elders who keep the wheels turning. They're the unsung heroes whose daily grind builds the foundation upon which those epic tales are spun. It's a reminder that while legends are born in the light of the fire, history is often made in the humdrum of everyday life. As the stars blanket the sky and the fire crackles down to embers, you reflect on the evening stories. Each tale, each song, each dance is a thread in the rich tapestry of Bantu culture, a testament to resilience and adaptability. In a world where the only constant is change, these cultural practices are the anchors that keep your community grounded. They remind you of who you are, where you come from, and, perhaps most importantly, where you're heading. So, as you prepare to rest, it's with the understanding that the night stories are more than just echoes of the past. They are blueprints for the future, guiding lights in the ever-unfolding narrative of the Bantu people. In this world of myths and music, you find your place, not just as a warrior, but as a keeper of culture, a guardian of the stories that shape your reality and your dreams. And while the romanticized image of the lone hero may persist, you know that the true strength of your people lies in the power of their shared stories. A legacy written not in ink, but in the vibrant, living voices of the community. Now, as you settle in with the comforting blanket of night wrapped around your shoulders, let's take stock of what all this means for the Bantu legacy, the tales, the dances, and yes, even the cattle. They're not just cultural artifacts, they're the threads of a vast tapestry that stretches across time and space, weaving together a continent's history. And what a tapestry it is. We're talking about an expansion that spanned over 5,000 kilometers and a millennium, touching nearly every corner of sub-Saharan Africa. That's not just a migration, it's a continental remix. Let's start with language. The Bantu languages, with their rich tonal variations and complex structures, are spoken by over 240 million people today. That's almost as if every American decided to pick up a vuvuzela and join the chorus. Swahili, Zulu, and Shona are just a few of the linguistic descendants of this grand expansion. These languages don't just serve as communication tools, they are cultural vessels, carrying the DNA of countless generations, infused with stories, proverbs, and the accumulated wisdom of the ages. It's a living legacy, one that continues to evolve and adapt, much like the people who speak it. But it's not just about words. The cultural ripple effect of the Bantu expansion is a testament to the power of human ingenuity and adaptability. Think about the sheer audacity of spreading across diverse ecosystems, from the lush rainforest of the Congo Basin to the arid plains of Namibia. Each new environment required a unique set of skills and adaptations. It's like a continental game of Survivor, only with fewer camera crews and more genuine stakes. The Bantu people's ability to adapt their agricultural practices, social structures, and even spiritual beliefs to each new environment is nothing short of remarkable. And let's not forget the economic dimension. The introduction of iron smelting technology was a game changer, akin to the Industrial Revolution of its time. With iron tools, farming became more efficient, leading to population growth and the establishment of more complex societal structures. This wasn't just survival. It was a thriving, interconnected world, with trade networks that crisscrossed the continent like ancient highways. Goods like iron, salt, and even cowrie shells became the currency of choice, facilitating not just economic exchange, but also cultural and political ties. Now, here's where we debunk a few myths. It's tempting to romanticize this period as a time of noble warriors and idyllic villages, but the reality was far more complex. Life as a Bantu warrior wasn't all glory and adventure. It was a constant balancing act of diplomacy, strategy, and survival. Conflict was a part of life, and while the iron-tipped spear was a powerful symbol of strength, it was often the quiet negotiations and alliances that truly determined the course of history. The Bantu expansion wasn't a peaceful stroll through the savannah, it was a saga of human resilience and adaptability, a testament to the enduring spirit of those who dared to venture into the unknown. As you reflect on this legacy, it's clear that the Bantu expansion is not just a historical footnote, it's a foundational chapter in the story of Africa. Its impact on languages, cultures, and economies is a powerful reminder that history is not just about the past, it's about the ongoing narrative that shapes the present and influences the future. The romanticized image of the lone warrior may persist, but the true story is one of community, resilience, and the relentless pursuit of progress. So, as you lay your head down to rest, know that you're part of a legacy that echoes through time, a legacy forged in the fires of innovation, tempered by the challenges of survival, and passed down through the stories, songs, and dances that continue to bind communities together. It's a legacy that reminds us of the power of human connection and the enduring strength of shared history. And while the tales of daring-do and mythical heroes may capture the imagination, it's the everyday acts of courage, cooperation, and creativity that truly define the Bantu story. A story that continues to unfold with each new generation.